What's up, everyone? Welcome to Normal Hammock Show. Rob Knorr, host. Happy to be here. How's everyone's day? Mine's great. Didn't get much sleep. Was up a little excited last evening. I don't know, there's some things going on. Maybe you caught the election. It was fun. We had a great night. Tried to keep it measured and calm till 1:15. I felt that at 1:15 I'd seen enough to call it. It has since been called. We have a concession by Kamala Harris. Donald Trump will be the next president, barring a lawfare strategy or something worse. Goodness knows it wouldn't be the first time that they've tried to go after Trump in other ways. Was I sandbagging the entire time? We'll talk about the strategy of going into things. I do. I feel silly, Will. So, yeah, we'll pick on Destiny a little here. Don't worry. Let's first talk about my prediction that Kamala Harris would win. That prediction was based, as I'd always said, on my gut. My head, particularly looking at 2 weeks out from the election, all the signs seem to be pointing favorably to Trump. Now, none of those signs were like 90%. Oh, shit, this sign, this poll or this early voting turnout, etc. by party, voter registrations increasing in certain states. None of those on their own was an indicator that Trump was going to win. But each of them was like that's a small point in Trump's favor. And when you added all those up, it was certainly not something that I think in any way, shape, or form justified saying, I think there's a better than not chance Trump will win. But it certainly was points in his favor, and you didn't see a lot of points in Kamala Harris's favor. So if I knew nothing about the two parties involved or nothing about the history of the Republican Party, Democrat Party, the lawfare against Trump, the attempts on his life, every institution in this country engaging in corruption to be able to take down Trump, I would have said, based on what I'm seeing here, looks like the momentum's with Trump. That would be my prediction. But my gut told me they ain't going to leave this dude win. And they still may not let him get sworn into office for the aforementioned reasons. So that was my prediction. I had mentioned that was the same prediction I had in 2016, and I was wrong, and I was hoping that I would be wrong this time. Now, was this intentional sandbagging? No, but yes, if that makes sense. And let me explain. No, it wasn't, in that it was my sincere belief, even going up until Election Day, I did not think that Trump would win, because I thought that there would be enough ballot harvesting, enough shenanigans that would occur on Election Day or on the early voting before it that he wouldn't win. But I admit that I was predisposed to that belief through a bias where I enjoy feeling like an underdog and feel that it motivates me better to work harder. And I feel that that's, in general, how most people are. If you tell people, hey, you got this in the bag, you've already won, people let their foot off the gas. If you tell people we're narrowly losing this thing, then people are more likely to go out and vote, to go out and work hard. So yes, I have a bias towards sandbagging myself, I guess, but it wasn't something that I was intentionally lying. I truly believed that Donald Trump was likely to lose. It wasn't until about 8:30 when doing the live stream last night, then in my gut, I was like, this is looking pretty good. I tried to be reserved. By about 11 o'clock, I thought there's almost no possibility that Trump could lose this at this point. But I was not saying that because I knew that people were watching me for a measured response. I was trying to just use the data and not put my own feelings in it. The reason was, and I mentioned this last night, when you see sort of the places that are predicting, what they're basically doing is their predictions are going to get more accurate as the evening goes on. Now, there's still going to be disparity. There could still be times that they're wrong, as we'll get to one of those scenarios that happened last night, where it appears as if there was a mistake by one of the places I was looking at. But when you see all of them trending in the same direction, and it trending in that direction as you see 60% of the vote, 70% of the vote, 80% of the vote, and it keeps trending closer and closer to Trump. Trump's lead's getting wider and wider and wider. What that's doing is, let's say I was to predict, let's say there was an election next year, and I would try to predict who's going to win a particular state. And what I would likely do if I was I would try to get polls, I would try to contact people and see what the vibe was. I would look at the history of that state. I would look at the change since the last election in things like voter registration. Those are the sorts of things I would be doing, looking at in each district how people were likely to vote in the past. And then I would try to make, based on the data that I was able to receive, an educated guess into what I thought would happen. The data you're receiving is better than just these educated guesses once you have data coming in that day. So, for example, if there is a precinct with literally 0% of the vote in, my guess will be less effective or less accurate on average than if it is a guess after I see what 20% of that precinct has voted. Now, having that data of the 20% of that precinct, I'm able to narrow my guess because I'm going to make some assumptions. Okay, now I add that data to the rest of the data I was putting in, the early vote numbers, the voter registration, the historical way that county votes, and I say, well, it turns out that this 20% that we've already counted suggests a 2% swing towards Republicans. So traditionally, this has gone 60-40 for Democrats. Now it looks like with the 80% outlying votes, it may go 58 instead of 60-40. But we'll put it at 59, and you make a guess based on that. That guess becomes more accurate as the night goes on. Now you have 70% of the precinct, because imagine this. The precinct's all going to have people of the same demographic. So if you're just counting 1,000 ballots from this precinct and it takes you 10 minutes to get through 100 ballots, chances are that ballots 900 through 1,000 are going to be quite similar through the first 900 ballots. So you're going to have less variance as time goes on. And so that's how you're able to get more and more accurate predictions. Petrogard, thanks so much for the super chat for $5. What do I think Kamala will do now that she's out? And when the answer is OnlyFans, will you vomit? Now, she'll definitely get involved in lobbying or with the media if she chooses to not run for Senate again. I would think that her political career is done as far as a elected candidate. But she'll definitely be involved at the fundraising level, at the pundit level, something to that effect. She'll, get a thanks so much, Ezio. She'll get an honorary degree teaching somewhere or something like that. So anyways, by about 10:30 or 11, I was like, oh boy, the chances of Trump losing at this point are really slim. But I waited until 1:30. So, and I was clearly very excited. Look, before I get into talking shit on some people here, let me just say, by the way, at around 8 p.m., I will be joined by Fabian Liberty. And we don't really have a plan, I think, other than to talk about the election. For those that don't know Fabian's someone I really enjoy talking to. He could also be one of the most annoying people to talk to in the world, because I think he's a very smart guy. And he's an ANCAP. And some of these ANCAP discussions could get very philosophical. So it's sometimes if you want to talk about like, dude, did you see that video of that cop punching that woman in the face? Instead of talking about that video, sometimes with Fabian, you end up talking about the philosophical ramifications of the non-aggression principle. But I love talking to Fabian. I do. I think he's a smart guy, and I think he's a good guy. I think he's a great first person to talk to after the election, for the first person to get sort of a different perspective. I don't think Fabian voted for Trump. I think he wrote someone in as an ANCAP. And so it'll be interesting to get his perspective. He's not some diehard Trumper, but he's not a Kamala person. He's not a Trump person. So it'll be interesting to get a perspective of someone like that and just to shoot the shit. So I'm looking forward to that. So that'll be around 8 o'clock. But up until then, you're stuck with me. I hope you enjoy it. We will talk some trash on some of the lefties here in a minute. But, hey, what's up, Daddy Don Trump? Don't you have work to be doing? before we get there, I wanted to talk about, what was the question someone asked? I didn't watch The View. What is my role here going forward? Well, I have conflicting thoughts. Part of me says, listen, it's time to be magnanimous and just be like, I'm not going to pour salt in the wounds. And I didn't pour salt in the wounds in 2016. I didn't. So part of me thinks I should have never said anything to any left-wing streamer. I should have just been like, it's okay. And then part of me is like, to hell with these people. Not only would they have talked trash on me, but they've said and done and repeated stupid stuff and unethical things, in my opinion, blatantly lying about the Liz Cheney hoax, clutching their pearls over Tony Hinchcliffe's joke, all of that stuff, calling me Rob GPT, just stupid shit, no big deal, but why should I not throw it back in their face? Ultimately, what I've decided on is this. For a short period of time, I will be turning the knife, so to speak. But only to people that I have directly streamed with that I think deserve it. I will not be doing that to the average Kamala voter. I won't. That doesn't mean I'm not going to like or laugh at some TikTok of someone going, no, my life is over. Okay, whatever. But the average Kamala voter, I understand, is probably really scared right now. And I get that. There is a swath of institutions that have kept people in a bubble through control of information that has led them to believe that literally more than half the voters in this country picked Hitler. And they're scared shitless. Yeah, I tried to change my video title on X. It didn't let me. There's nothing I can do now unless I stop this. I could try this, I guess. Dustin Buck, thanks so much for the super chat, $10. Just curious, you're going to have a perpetual negative outlook on anything that Trump does because you're going to make perfect the enemy of good. No, did I do that last time? I think I have a track record of not doing that. I'll criticize him when he deserves it, and I'll explain why. But no, I think I was mostly positive on Trump in the first 4 years. So no, I don't. I think my track record would show I wasn't someone who was just sour grapes yelling about Trump all the time. Thanks, Courtney. I appreciate it. Hopefully the title changed there. So for me, the individual voter, the average person, my friends that are Democrats, I'm not going to shit on them. The streamers, it's a different story. They're my contemporaries. For me, it would be unethical to not treat them as basically equals. I don't have to baby them, so that's not what I'm going to do. John Rock for $2 says, did you see Governor Hochul attorney Letitia James? No. I heard Letitia a little clip, like 5 seconds, and basically she's going to keep her cases going. So anyways, I've decided for a little while, I'm going to rib these people on the left. Like Pisco, like Destiny, like Hutch, like Josiah, like Econoboy. Those that I think deserve it. Others, I'm not going to rib as much, like Wick, who I don't think is outrageous. So that's my intent going forward. Now, before we get to some of these specifics, John Rock, thanks so much. Super chat for $2 says, my sister's an MSNBC TDS. I feel bad for her today. Yeah, I do feel bad for a lot of those. Dano says, Rob, shout out to you for being an absolute bulldog, fighting the fight. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks to all the kind words for people. I have been working hard, and I'm glad that it goes noticed. And a few of the people that said that I may have been the reason they voted, that really means a lot. It really does. So I do appreciate it. No, I get you, Dustin Buck. Totally get it. I don't mind the questions being asked. Now, before I jump in to that, let's do this real quick. So as you know, there's still some ongoing races. It's still technically up in the air as to whether or not Republicans win the House. That's going to be important because if they lose the House, you're going to start off with perpetual impeachment scenarios against Trump. So if we look at the decision desk that we were looking at, their prediction of the House is now 88.7% chance. And they're predicting Republicans will end up with 221. That puts them 3 over the amount of control. Now, I mentioned yesterday that at one point last night, you could see here in the middle of the night, it looked very bad for Republicans, up to a 63% chance of Democrats winning the House. And you can see that their predictions changed radically from then. And so it can happen just because that prediction's a certain way. What's more important is the trend of the prediction. So you can see right here at this point where it starts to trend up, and then it flatlines and trends up, and then flatlines and trends up. There's little bumps the whole way through, but you see it's trending down here, then it's trending up. That's where you sort of get an idea. It's not just, oh, it was 57% here. It's that it kept rising, and then it stayed flat. Then it rose, then flat, then rose. Like, that shows you that things are constantly trending in that direction. So you can see some of the races that are outstanding. So if we go over here to the New York Times, you can see the outstanding races. We have 204. So Republicans would need 14 of the races that haven't been called. Of all of these, they would need 14 of those to gain the House. And you can see right now, these ones that are sort of a darker red, you can sort of see that those are pretty likely to be Republican seats. So of the ones where Republicans are ahead now by 1 point or more, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, that's a must, or that's a guaranteed, 17. So you can see, even if we don't look at these two that are very close, like you see right here, you have from this section, come on. You can see that you have a litany of races that are 2,000 votes. I mean, even 3,000 or less. There's still a litany of those out there. So some of them, like here, you see 95% in. That's probably bad news. But it's looking good. Dustin Buck, I think I read this, but Super Chat, $2. No animosity, just asking straight across. Yeah, absolutely. No problem. So that it's looking good in the House, and we'll continue to track those races. The Senate, Republicans already win with 52, but more is certainly better. I'm looking at probably 54, a potential of 54 pickup. So this race right here, Dave McCormick, that's in my state. He would be my senator. I think that it's all but guaranteed that he wins that. You can see that almost all the votes are in. It's more than 95%. Nearly all of the estimated have been reported, and you can see that McCormick's up 28,000 votes. I just don't think, even with provisional ballots, that there's enough of those votes out there. And then you would need all of those votes, even if there were 28,000 votes left out there with sort of the provisional, they would all have to go to Bob Casey, which that's just absurd. You could see, for example, even in the best counties for Bob Casey, in Philadelphia County, for example, if they all came from there, which they wouldn't, that's still only plus 60. So even that would not be enough. So it looks very bleak, and I look for them to call that race probably this evening. So that's I think, unless something radical changes, almost a foregone conclusion. And that leaves one outstanding race where there's likely to be a difference, and that's right here. And I'm seeing that things are looking very good for Sam Brown out of Nevada. This was, you can see here, if you go back, this was actually in the Dems expected to win category. This wasn't even in the competitive. You see the Republicans picked up everything they were expected to win. So this would be sort of a surprise. And it's looking very good for Sam Brown in Nevada. That would, if those two were called, that would put the Republicans at an impressive 54 Senate seats, which is good because once in a while, you're always going to have some outliers on any particular partner or party. So it's very good if you get to that percentage. So, good news all around. So we'll keep our eyes on those House races as the days go by. We're going to start to see more and more results tonight, tomorrow, and the following day. But we're hoping for the trifecta is what we're hoping for. Because if we lose the House, the Senate's a foregone conclusion. It's just how much the Republicans win it by at this point. Presidency, clearly, Republicans have won. Now it's just a question of the House. And it looks good news that the Republicans will take the House. And if that's the case, unless you have an outlier or two, you're less likely to see things like an impeachment. I forgot to mention that. So then there's the race of Kari Lake. It's definitely worth bringing this up. And that could put you at 55. Thank you so much for bringing this up. So it looks glum right now with Lake 3% down. However, due to the fact that we have mostly election day votes yet to be counted, and you see a lot of the outstanding votes are in these red rural areas. 28 in, 54 in, 58 in, 81 in Gallia, 69, 57, 82. Compare that to like Phoenix, you already have in Maricopa 65% in. Tucson, you already have 62% in. So it seems to be that you have a lot of these deep red areas that have less than the 60% in. And I was reading that they're saying it's going to be very close, that the margins are going to be ridiculously close. So that's another potential Senate pickup. So something to keep your eye on there. Now, specifically, some of the pushing back I've given to some of the people on X. I haven't talked to anyone. Basically, many of the left-wingers that I normally debate, have interactions with, are sort of radio silent, which I understand that. Probably a lot of shit they're getting. I think they sort of deserve it. Now, let me explain. There's different levels of sort of schadenfreude that you could heap on someone. I'm not making fun of people's personal lives. I'm not making fun of their looks. I'm not making fun of their families. I'm not making fun of their relationships. I'm not doing any of that, right? Some light ribbing, like, oh, how'd that prediction of yours go? Things like that. Hope you had a great night last night. Hey, are you still for packing the court? Stuff like that. I think that's in bounds. Does anyone disagree with that? That seems to be in bounds. For me, I would expect that shit if it was my side that lost. So, I don't think I've done anything that's... Yeah, the DOJ did drop the charge. Jack Smith dropped the charges against Trump. Hilarious. The day after he wins the election. All but confirming it was election interference. Is exactly what it was. So I don't think I've done anything that's super out of bounds. I don't. For example, with Destiny put early in the night, like 9 o'clock, I'm calling it, it's over, Harris wins. And I just quote posted that and just put, GG, good game. That's it. That's it. Then he put out a few days ago, one of the two sides is going to in for one of the biggest shocks in our lifetimes. And I was put, what a prophet. That's it. Pisco, I put something to the effect of, hope you had a good night. I know I did. Then put a little dancing Snoopy emoji. And then I did some other things. That's it, though. It's not my nature to be too vicious. So those are the sort of things I was doing. Okay, whatever. Most of the people haven't responded to me. Great, grand. Okay. Okay? I then put up a video today, and I truly believe this video. One of the things I plan on doing, probably with tomorrow's show, we're at Wednesday here, so probably tomorrow's show. Wednesday or Friday, we'll probably take Collins. Tomorrow's show, my plan is, if I have time, I want to make a list of probably 10 of the biggest winners and 10 of the biggest losers in this election. And when I say winners and losers, I don't mean, Dave McCormick, winner, he won the race. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about You want to know who's a winner? Like, let me give you a taste of what I'm talking about. Let me put it this way. Here's a loser that you may not have thought of. You want to know who one of the losers of last night's election was? Ronna McDaniel, former head of the RNC. Absolute clown. Presided over the RNC at a time where she was incapable of not only mustering legal challenges to the massive changes in the law that we saw when it came to voting, but then she wasn't able to get a ground game together to actually use those very tactics. Say what you will about nepotism and Laura Trump replacing Ronna McDaniel at the head of the RNC, but it seemed to do a much better job in 2024 than it did in 2020. It had lawyers on the ground on election day when issues struck up in like Cambria County here in Pennsylvania. They were there within the hour. They let it be known that they were going to have people all over all precincts, and they were going to aggressively pursue anyone they saw as breaking the law. So that's the sort of thing I'm going to be talking about a little tomorrow. Like maybe you didn't see Ronna McDaniel as one of the losers. So I'm going to be talking about things like that, winners and losers, that sort of. One of the biggest losers, though, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, and you might think I'm being hyperbolic, but I actually mean this. One of the biggest losers is left-wing streamers. I say this with no degree of hyperbole. I think that they potentially are a small part, but nonetheless a vital part in why the Democrats lost. The left-wing streaming community. And I did a little short I'd like to show you, and it'll explain why. Help if I have the audio on, huh? There we go. I want to take this moment to give a shout out to a group that we couldn't have done it without. As a MAGA streamer, I really want to thank all the left-wing streamers that I routinely debate that did things like make fun of Corey Compatore, the firefighter that was killed, and say that Trump supporters are effing around and finding out if they get murdered at a Trump rally, and saying that a comedian's joke meant that all Trump supporters were racist, or that the Madison Square Garden rally was just a rally of Nazi people. MAGA couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much for being such a profound voice and revealing exactly who so many of the leadership in the Democratic Party were. You didn't represent actual Democrat voters who are actually just normal people who want the things that are best for the country. No, you decided to be hyperbolic, to lie, to spread hoaxes, and to be hateful. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart to all these left-wing streamers that I debate routinely, thank you so much. We couldn't have done it without you. I want to take this moment. So that's it. Now, does anyone, I believe that. I do. I do think that it's not just, I think that these left-wing streamers, one of the things that's amazing about the Democrats is how on brand they are. Like, they're so good from the top level to the top of the administration, down to the lower level politicians, down to the media, down to the streamers that you see online, and then down to just the people you see posting on social media. They're always so good at saying the exact same talking points. And oftentimes you see this occur in real time. You'll see some sort of scandal break, like Joe Biden calls Republican supporters garbage or Trump supporters garbage. And it's like there's dead air for like 2 hours until like one person says something and then bam, 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 bam. They're all repeating it. Or the Her report, right? Where it says, actually Biden did mishandle classified documents, but he's old and frail, and so a jury would have found him too difficult to prosecute. Bam, 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 bam. They don't say anything forever, and then they all start repeating the same talking point over and over. So what I'm saying is, because of the hyperbolic nature of many of these left-wing streamers, and some with far more eyeballs on them than others, and just how radical they're seen, not just them, but the idea that pervades and that radical nature being associated with the Democratic Party, I think that a lot of Americans saw that and were disgusted. In fact, I had several people in comments, whether it be on my live stream or in comments on my videos, saying, listen, I was a Destiny fan. I planned on voting for Democrats until I saw his behavior after the assassination attempt of Trump. It was too much. I was disgusted. And there's a lot of that assassination attempt of Trump and the fact that the media basically went silent on it and then continued to say that Trump was a Nazi. And then you had streamers like Destiny, who ends up on big shows like Piers Morgan, that's basically making fun of Trump for it. And then you had as many as 1/3 of Democrats polled that were like, yeah, we'd have probably been better off if Trump would have been killed by that bullet. You have to understand, normie people, right, that were trying to decide, I think the record of Trump is probably better than the record of Harris, but Trump's sort of unlikable and says some crazy shit. When they look over at the other side and they say, wow, look at the crazy shit they're saying. That does immense damage. So I am tip of the cap to those streamers, those people I interacted with, who have chosen to engage in that very type of the worst hyperbolic rhetoric, of blatant lies, of spreading hoaxes. Tip of the cap to them. Now, here's the post I put out in X, and I attached that video. I'm not going to play the video for you again, but I named some people specifically. I say, I want to take this moment to give a shout out to all the left-wing streamers I've talked to who did things like mock the death of Corey Compatore, called Trump supporters garbage, stupid, immoral, Nazis, fascist, etc., said Trump supporters were F around find out if they got murdered at a Trump rally, spread hoaxes, freaked out about comedians' jokes, screamed the Supreme Court made Trump God, Emperor, King, who could eliminate his opponent with Navy SEALs, Econoboy, Hutch, Pondering, Pisco, and especially Destiny. I know there's some I'm missing, but you all deserve mentioning. Thank you so much. Without you, who knows if this great mega victory would have been possible. And that's it. That's the post I put. I don't think that post is over the top. I sincerely believe that. I do. However, I don't think that that's a personal, like, a below-the-belt attack. I think that's within the bounds of political discourse. And for that post, I received this. There he is, folks. There he is. The champion of the left. Their most badass debater. Destiny. Whoops-a-daisy. So, for those of you that are keeping notes, in the past month, I agreed with zero preparation time whatsoever to go onto a stream with Destiny to talk about what he wanted half the time, which was January 6th and the definition of insurrection, something that he claimed he was actually writing a dossier or manifesto or something about, so it was his area of expertise. And I agreed to do that as long as he talked half the time about the double standard and how we treat the term insurrection. I talked with him for nearly 4.5 to 5 hours on what he wanted, and then after broaching what I wanted for 10 minutes, he rage quit. Then, after that rage quit, he blacklisted me. And now, the big tough guy that calls people out for debating blocked me on X. Here's a guy that's got such thick skin that he could mock a firefighter that's killed by an insane person who's trying to assassinate Trump. Oh, it was all jokes, wasn't it? It was great. And he mocked Republicans that were upset for having a thin skin. Ha ha ha. And he kept doubling down. See, because that's such a thick skin that Destiny has. Cool, fine, no problem. Jokes are jokes, right? But the sissy can't help it when someone just makes a little jab at him. Oh boy, that's too much. I'm going to block you. Destiny, stay in your little bubble. Do your little fucking spaces with people that you think you could bully around because they're not gifted rhetoricians. Stay away from debating people like me that you know will fucking wreck you, even if it's on topics that you claim to be an expert on. When you rage quit because you're pissed off, when even people on your side like Pisco have to admit that you didn't understand what you were talking about and you're lying about what you read, go ahead and make an excuse up and go, but that's because 2 hours ago, Rob used AI that ended up being right and I didn't have a problem with at the time. Then run like a little bitch on X when someone pushes back just a little and block them because you have to stay in your safe space, just like all of your shitty fans. Got it? Is that clear enough? Now, let me take one thing back that I said there. Not all of Destiny's fans are shitty. Destiny happens to be a very entertaining person. I don't think you could deny that. And a lot of people like tuning in just like they'd like to tune into an episode of Jerry Springer. You might see some crazy shit if you're tuning into a Destiny show. Maybe you'll see him spurg out and start saying borderline shit that, like, you don't know what he's saying about an assassination attempt. Who knows? But there's certainly a portion of his audience that just is in this weird parasocial relationship with him. And they, repeat everything he says verbatim, and they don't really think that hard on it. Now, allow me to say, I wish no ill will on Destiny. I don't want his channel banned. I'm not cheering for bad things to happen to him in life. I'm not. It's just not in me. But I'll call it out when I see it. Understand this. I got shit for defending Destiny joking. There's still one guy that's always on X like, you ran to Destiny for clout. Fuck you. I'll talk to anyone. And run to him for clout? Oh, it looks like someone gifted. Let me get to that. Thanks so much, whoever gifted something. Let's get to that. Jess Gerald, thank you so much. Gifted 50 memberships. You guys are the best. By the way, I'm only like 20 subscribers away from 10,000. We'll do a special 10,000 more. 10 more subs for 10K. If you haven't subbed, we could get there tonight, man. We could get there. So I don't wish any ill on Destiny as a person or anything like that, but I'm just calling it out. If you want to be the big man, that's fucking running around telling jokes about people getting killed, and then you get your panties in a bunch because someone pushes back a little on you when you have one bad election, then maybe you don't have the thick skin that you're pretending. Just maybe. Man, people have been incredibly generous with the memberships. I really appreciate it. I really do. Another post that's worth bringing up, talking about another person who, to their credit, hasn't been that much of a crybaby, but still sort of been ignoring things. Now, I didn't watch the stream last night, Destiny's live stream, but my understanding is, from context clues and from things people have told me, there was some sort of Destiny big man in people like Pisco. Now listen, I'll be straight up. In many ways, Pisco's a little baby too. But I think he's better than Destiny on many aspects. He's not as entertaining, but many of the ways that he interacts at times, when he's not giving into his word. See, there's like two versions of Pisco. There's the person you could talk to when he's not trying to be a big man, and there's actually something there worth talking to. And then there's like the person who posts on X that posts in all caps and is constantly reposting and liking their own post immediately as soon as they post them, and that won't respond to you like a human being when you type something and they respond and then you respond. Instead, they have to quote post everything so that they can stay in their little bubble and get more engagement, and then it's impossible to follow a conversation. And it's, like I said, it's posting in all caps and just being a tough guy on there. That Pisco sucks. But I don't think that's who he always is. Apparently, Pisco was a little more foresight than Destiny. So I hear. I haven't seen this for myself, but people I know have told me this that I trust. And he was trying to suggest things like, listen, this is not a slam dunk. You need to brace yourself. This might not go Kamala's way. And apparently he was getting treated like shit by Destiny for this, who basically forced him to leave the table at one point. I'm at 10K? Did we make it? Holy shit. That's amazing if it's true. Did we make it to 10K? Let's check that. Correas, thanks so much for the gifted sub. I have to check this before I finish my story here. My anecdote. YouTube Studio. I am exactly 10K. We did it. Thank you so much, everyone. That is an amazing achievement for me. Thank you. Who was it? Who was the 10,000th? Who was it? My goodness. Thank you guys so much. It means so much to me. It really does. I've had this. I'll talk about this in a second. I'll talk about the 10K thing in a second. I'll finish my story about Pisco. Then we'll go to that, and then we'll hop right in with Fabian Liberty. Thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, Jess Gerald, for gifting another 50 memberships. Man, you guys are the best. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I promise you, I'm going to keep putting content out in an even better clip. I'm motivated to make this show better, to be more consistent. I'm going to get membership-only content. That stuff's all coming down the pipe with the help of my editor, Black Elk. We got a lot of ideas, a lot of debate reviews, other things like that, debates that I'm going to be participating in. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. You guys are the best. To finish this story about Pisco, imagine that, man. Chuck says, it seemed like Destiny was playing the overcope to be funny character. It was actually pretty funny. I agree. The little bit I saw was that. But I'm also hearing that he basically told Pisco to leave the table at some point, and Pisco did, like, with his tail between his legs and then came back. And the reason I put veracity into that is Pisco's post on X today. So let's get to that. Pisco post, getting some messages about laughing on last night's stream. The laughter was literally copium, at least for me, not meant to disrespect the seriousness of the result. Gallows humor more than anything. Promise you it was one of the worst nights I've ever had. What a privileged life. Thank you so much, Wes Calabrese, for the super chat, $10. $10 for 10K, thank you. That's one of the worst nights you've ever had. Okay. What I put was, things are not going well for the left. The party of joy is now scolding people for laughter. It's okay, Pisco, you could join us. We know how to have fun. All we ask you to do is stop posting in all caps and reposting all of your own posts. So, I don't know, maybe at least in Pisco's mind, even if Destiny was joking, he felt that the audience was a little hostile to him not going along with the party line that much. I mean, I don't know what to say. They're collapsing. These streamers are collapsing. Right now, and what I'm going to be talking to Fabian Liberty about is the fallout from this election. Fabian's over on Wick's panel right now, and I just caught a little of it. He's on there with Econoboy, Lactoid, and someone else, and the lefties are like, how did we lose this election? What could have happened? And Fabian's trying to correctly tell them, like, maybe you ought to listen to people on the other side. Why don't you listen to them? Why don't you listen to the people that voted for Trump or that refused to go out and vote for Kamala? Why don't you listen to them? Instead of being like, well, the problem is the data point suggests we need to get more progressive. DMC says 50 gifted and I didn't get one. them's the breaks, aren't they? Let's see if I missed any Trump or that refused. John Rock, thank you so much. $2 says, I truly believe you helped Trump win. Thank you. Thomas O'Brien gifted 10 memberships. Thanks so much. You guys are the best. There's only 2 million channels with 10K in the world, and I'm one of them. Thank you. It does. It means a lot to me. I am the Rob that was on the Crucible last night. Thank you, and thanks for saying God bless. I really appreciate it. 111 gifted subs. Thank you so much. So we're about to have a guest on here, Fabian Liberty. We're going to talk about the fallout from the election, but I did want to take a moment to talk about reaching 10K subs. I started this channel in 2019. If you like, heck, I might even be able to do this. I can play you the first video I ever did in this channel. The original idea was never to sort of be a channel that talked about live streams, that did live streams. I didn't know shit all about live streams. Alls I knew was, hey, you could put videos up on this place, YouTube. Here's a fatter but less gray hair Rob explaining to you why I did my channel. Hi everyone, thanks for finding this channel. Just wanted to discuss a little what to expect for this channel. So I'm kind of a politics junkie, a news junkie. Spend way too much time reading stories online, alternative media sites, and watching mainstream media about current events of the day, news stories, philosophy, things of that nature. And
And I realized I live in rural Pennsylvania. Most of my friends have like real jobs, like truck drivers, farmers, work on road crews, things like that. They also have an interest in politics, but they don't have the luxury of having the free time like I have to be able to look into this stuff. So I really don't feel like there's a platform to make things accessible for people like that don't have hours every day to look into the background of these stories. So that was kind of why I wanted to start this channel, be able to give a big picture view of what's going on, break it down so you don't have to do hours of research. Now, I will have sources linked and things like that so people can do further research into it if they want. But I also think it'd be interesting to have people like that on this channel and kind of discuss how politics and current events affects their everyday lives at the jobs they're at. You don't really see many platforms where you have people like family farmers, truck drivers, things of that nature get to come on and discuss how politics affects their everyday life. So I think it'd be interesting to do that. And the third thing is I want to try to get people that disagree with me on the channel, because I think that we always learn a lot more through debate. And I think that's something we've lost. Like, it seems like now if someone says something you disagree with, you have to be offended by it or something. I think that's ridiculous. I don't mind like little name calling, things of that nature, but as long as it's funny, that's the important part. But we could be respectful, have respectful disagreements with each other, and I think that I would like this channel to show it's okay to disagree with someone. There's no one right answer a lot of times, so it'd be interesting to get people that disagree with me. Who knows, maybe I'll even learn something. So thanks for finding this channel, and I hope you continue to support it. Thanks so much.
So you can tell I was a little nervous even. Some of the things I say a lot, I say things like that a lot. I need to stop saying that. But you can see that I'm repeating myself with little filler words. It was sort of the second video I ever did, so I was repeating myself a lot. But that was it. That was back in 2019. First live stream I ever did, if I could, I don't know if it's still up. I've had to delete so many live streams. Here it is.
Straight dudes were uncomfortable when the dogs were humping male dogs, but they were like, yeah, when they were humping female.
What the hell am I talking about? Here we go. You can see I'm struggling here. I don't know what I'm doing. Don't have volume.
Green, and then you'll need to name your scene. I named mine webcam. Make sure that you have your scene selected, and now we're going to move on and add a source from the box on the right-hand side. A scene can have many sources. In fact, you'll see later on that mine have 3. But first I'm going to start with the video capture device. I'm using a Logitech C920 webcam, which is capable of HD, so I'm going to...
things for long enough time, people will say all the time, probably be able to pick out ways that I'm having discrepancies with myself. So yay, that'll be fun to look at. But that's just a few of my...
You see this in the chat? This guy, Nate Renown's a friend of mine in real life. Terry Ambrose, I'm not sure who that is. The only other guy that's here is Drone Tech. Drone Tech was the first person, he's a streamer, and has a channel. He had a bigger channel back then too, and he talked me through how to set up that live stream. That was 5 years ago, and you could see the live streams that I did. If you just look at those older live streams, you can see what my views are. And this is not just live stream viewers at the time. This is in total 47, 58, 88, 77, 35, 38, 116, 46, 32, 10, 39, 50, 48. Over and over and over. I wasn't breaking 50 total views. And that goes on forever. Then I moved into my new place. You can see we're on to year 2. I start breaking 500. Woo! I'm probably looking at 20 to 30 live streamers on one of those good shows. Most of the time I'm looking at 5, 6 live viewers. That's it. Years and years and years of streaming to 4 or 5 people. So it means a lot to me to reach 10,000 subscribers, and to, like, a day like today on YouTube alone, I have 287 people watching live. X, it's different. It's cumulative, but it says that there's 140 on there. And even on Twitch, I have 38. Kick and Rumble, I don't know how many are watching lives. So most of that growth has happened incredibly recently as well. it was not uncommon for me to have 30, 40 live Twitch viewers and maybe 50, 60 live YouTube viewers for most of last year. So I'm incredibly lucky. People have helped me out. People like Andrew Wilson at the Crucible through raids and other things like that. And a lot of other people. I think Black Elk, the guy who's editing for me, has done a tremendous amount to increase my reach. And so I'm very humbled, and I hope to see the growth be exponential. I'm going to continue to try to be consistent, and hopefully it translates into a better experience for all of you and a better channel for us all. Dustin Buck says, Kamala's concession speech is at a close. It certainly is. JD Salvo for $10 says, so is the popular voter compact going to verify Trump won 500 electoral votes? Should we take it to court? The popular vote compact does not come into effect until enough states sign on to it that it would be more than half the electoral college. So they don't have to adhere to it until it goes into effect, and it's not into effect. But yes, if it did, then yeah, Trump would get all those. So, but yeah, thanks for the 10K. Super chat from Dano for $5. Still want to see you do a proper interview feature on Jake Rattlesnake. Hopefully get your name out further. Yeah, I'll say this. I talked to Jake a little behind the scenes after I was on there the other day with him. First off, very interesting that the politician that's still going right now that I'm most interested in is Vivek Ramaswamy. And he had his guest, I think his name was Jack, that was on there, that's friends with Vivek. And Jake himself has interviewed Vivek. So very interesting. I would love to get an invitation to interview Vivek at some point. I think that would be tremendous. He's someone that I really respect and really appreciate the things that he's saying. But yeah, absolutely. Jake seemed to be happy with my performance on the show because he is of the mindset that conflict in a controlled manner actually leads to a better program, which I agree. And so me and Andrew debating each other so vigorously. If you missed it, I went on Jake's show and Andrew Wilson came on and tried to blow up the entire election by claiming that women shouldn't vote and gays shouldn't vote for Republicans and all this shit 24 hours before an election, which is a huge mistake in my opinion. But nonetheless, that's the direction Andrew chose to take it. And so me and Andrew argued about it, which is what we do. So, but I just reached out to Jake and was like, hey, I hope I didn't ruin your show. And he's like, no, that's great. I'm glad you and Andrew argued. That's good stuff. And certainly Andrew and I have no hard feelings. We argue with each other all the time. That's sort of the point of it. So I did Andrew's show last night while we were doing a review of the election. Jess Gerald. Thank you so much. Super chat, $10. Says, all worthwhile endeavors take a worthwhile amount of time. You're winning. Keep the momentum and never stop. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You know, my goals, Fabian will be in here soon, so I promise I'll stop talking about myself, but I am really impressed. Look, it's been a great 2 days. Winning as big as we did in this election after all the hard work that all of us put into it. That's awesome. It feels great. And then reaching 10,000 subs the next day on YouTube. It's really 2 personally great days for me in the history of this channel. So I'm very impressed. We will do a 10,000 sub special show. Probably the laziest thing I could think to do that, but that might be entertaining for you all. I think when I reached 1,000 subs, I think my wife and I did a show together, like an AMA with my wife and I, and you could ask her all the stupid shit about me. So maybe we'll do something like that. Sends Forward for $5 says, what would you say your and Andrew's biggest strengths and weaknesses are in debate? Andrew's biggest strength, me and Andrew, here's where we differ. I debate more of a normative style, and Andrew debates more of a philosophical style. So Andrew's often concerns with looking at things like, where do your core beliefs come from? Where is your system of morality? He's often interested in debating semantics and definitions of terms, sort of like the Socratic method. I'm more debating on a less philosophical level where I'm just like a normative, like, here is this policy and why this policy sucks. And I'm trying not to debate the semantics of terms as much. I would say that that's both our strong suits and weak suits. I think that puts Andrew in a very strong position to debate a ton of people that haven't really thought through their worldview and their positions that well. However, sometimes Andrew could get bogged down in that, I think, where he ends up looking like he doesn't have sort of an idea of where to go broader with the debate because he's hyper-focused on sort of the definition of one term. And I think sometimes that can be detrimental. It's the exact opposite with me. Oftentimes what will happen is I'm very good at debating this broader issue, but if I don't hammer someone down on the definition of a term or something like that, it ends up being moot because they'll slip away by hyper-focusing on some definition, which I don't argue as well as someone like Andrew Wilson. Also, a difference between us is I think even though I could be aggressive, I think in general, Andrew is more aggressive, which is sometimes an advantage. Sometimes it's a disadvantage. It depends on sort of the venue you're in and the sort of audience that you're reaching. So that could be a strong or a weak suit for either of us. But good question. Super chat for Brock, $5. I found you through Drunken Debates. Yeah, with John Burke. Another person that I have to thank who is a bigger streamer than me that sort of shouted me out. Last thing I'll say is, where do I plan on the channel to go from? I'm not ending the stream or anything. We're just waiting for Fabian Liberty to come. Where do I plan on taking the show from here? Well, here's the idea. Eventually, I would love to do this full time. The problem is this. I'm not a spring chicken. I have a family. I have a 3-year-old son and I have a wife. I cannot quit my job without guaranteed income. So let's say I made on average $90,000 a year, plus had insurance through my work. In order for me to justify quitting, I refuse to take 1 cent less for my family. So that would mean at a bare minimum, I would need $90,000 a year from streaming, and I would have to make up the difference because I would no longer be offered insurance through work. I would have to make more money to be able to pay for my own insurance for my family. So you're reasonably looking at probably $111,000 a year I'd have to make through streaming. However, here's the problem. Even if I made $200,000 this year streaming, which I will not do, that is a pipe dream. I'm not saying I'm anywhere near that. Don't get it twisted. But even if I did make that, I still couldn't quit my job because it's not guaranteed income. Because YouTube could say, there, your channel's gone. Just like that. Because of that, I'm sort of at the whims of a place like YouTube. If they decide that the type of content that I'm producing is no longer to be monetized, that's it. So how can I take that risk that then my family will be in a position where I can't provide for them? I can't take that risk. However, there's still several things I could do to move towards that goal. One of the things that I think could be done is to get paid backing by someone. Selling out is the colloquial way to put that. Now, it's not really selling out, though, because what it is you find someone who's a financial backer that agrees with you ideologically, and you get hired by them. Someone like Glenn Beck at The Blaze, who's hired Alex Stein. I think that I would be fantastic at a place like The Blaze. I think that if I had the opportunity where there was resources put into me, of a guaranteed income plus resources that I could use to sort of have a studio and have people that I could bring on to work for me, I think that I could really make one of the most impressive shows in the country. I'm on Rumble right now streaming, so I am on Rumble. I think that I'm that good at, I think I'm entertaining. I think I'm a great interviewer. I think I'm a great debater. I think I do a pretty damn good show when it's just me on my own. So, and I think I'm funny if we're going in that direction. So I think that's certainly something that I would be intrigued by. I would have to have creative control over my content, though, just like Alex Stein. I can't pretend to be something I'm not. That's a deal breaker. I don't give a shit how much money's offered. But if someone was willing to say, I like what you do, keep going, here, I'll pay you to work under my network, I would be interested in that. So that's a possibility. I also think that in general, even if it never comes to that, one of the things that I really want to work hard at doing for this channel is merge 3 audiences or 3 groups of people. I want to merge a traditional older conservative audience that listens to things like talk radio. So an audience that someone like Rush Limbaugh would have had, usually older conservatives, right? That audience for the conservative talk radio base with sort of a different audience, which tends to be slightly younger, with sort of people that are watching streamers and they're interested in politics, like all of you right now. To merge those 2 audiences, and then the third group I would like to be in is people that are actually involved at the political level or the cultural level in our society. So Congress people, media people, entertainers. That's the idea. Sort of to be like a more specifically politically motivated Joe Rogan. I do have the face for radio. It's absolutely true. That's the idea. So when I'm trying to reach out and I'm doing my 26-hour stream, there's a method to my madness. When I'm driving hours and hours and hours out east here in Pennsylvania, I am legitimately going to meetings to try to help Republicans win. But I'm also building connections. And I'm trying to convince people, some people that have money, some people that have talent, some people that have connections, that we need to create a group that is focused on pushing conservative Republican values in an entertaining way, and that could have financial backing, connections, and bring in a bunch of talented people in this space under an umbrella where we still give them creative control, but we have disparate people that are doing things in different ways that are all reaching different areas of that culture that we're pushing for. So a network of channels that you would have someone like Andrew Wilson at the Crucible that's coming at things through more of a funny, edgy, but Christian populist sort of message. And then you have someone like me who's coming from almost a more libertarian adjacent populist message, right? You could have other people, maybe people that are doing more just religious content, like my friend Let's Be Frank. Maybe people that are doing more media-focused content, like my friend Drone Tech Politics. You have people like John Ward out in State College, Center County, Pennsylvania, who's doing great work, and he's getting a network of young Republicans that are working with him that are getting into broadcast. That sort of idea. This is what Steven Crowder, you remember when Steven Crowder had this big war against the Daily Wire and was like, if you're a conservative streamer and you want to get involved and you want someone that could back you, contact me. I did contact him. I never heard anything back, but it's a great idea. That idea is really a great idea. It really is. And so that's ultimately what I'm pushing for in the next stage of my channel. And then other than that, just on my own, what I would like to do is have new forms of content like debate reviews, keep pushing out the short form content, and keep doing more debates and having more guests. Those are things that I have on the agenda. And lastly, to do things that are more interactive with my audience specifically. So have more fun events, have things like giveaways, get you all to know me as a person more, have more call-in shows, and to develop more of a community. And that's largely inspired by what I see, the great work that's going on in the Crucible. I think one of the greatest compliments I could give a streamer is when you have an audience that is so involved with you. And I think there's a healthy way to do that, and then there's an unhealthy way to do it. And I think when I look at the Crucible, not just in the amount of donations that Andrew gets when he streams to the Crucible, but the interaction. If there's 1,000 people watching a live stream on the Crucible, the chat's going crazy because everyone feels like they're part of a community. And I think that's very important. And I think I tip my cap to Andrew. I think he's one of the best people at that. And listen, imitation's the best form of flattery. You're damn right. I'll steal good ideas when I see them. And I don't think Andrew would be upset with that at all. I also do plan on working with Andrew at the Crucible more. I would like to work with Alex Stein more. I'd like to work with John Burke more. I'd like to work with John Ward more. But I want to keep those connections for people I respect that are doing this space, whether they be bigger streamers than me or smaller, so that we can keep that loose relationship and hopefully then have a network of people that's out there with the ultimate goal of pushing culture in a direction that we all want and keeping these victories like we saw last night keep rolling. And you see people that are going into these spaces that are dominant. Look, in 2016, 2015, Meme Magic won that election. The conservative Republican presence, particularly the MAGA presence on places like YouTube, the meme wars, everyone could joke around about that shit, but it was real. And then what happened was through manipulation of the algorithm and through our government pushing organizations like Alphabet that owns YouTube to demonetize, censors, shadow ban, now we see that on most of these spaces, left-wing political streamers are actually have a huge advantage. I want to change that. That's why I'm not going to leave Twitch. That's why I'm still in places like Kick. I'm trying to diversify the platforms I'm at because I will not cede ground. And what I want to do is build a network of people, not me, doesn't have to be me at the top, that's not what I'm suggesting, but I hope that if I could be a part of that and someone who has a better eye for this shit, whether they have financial backing to be able to do it or they have a better strategy for how to do this, because I don't have that shit. But I would like to help facilitate that movement occurring. And so that we could have a block of programming where maybe you would know, I tune in at 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and I'm going to hear Rob Noor. And then 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I'm going to hear Sarah Kane. And then from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. I'm going to hear John Ward. And from 3 to 5 I'm going to hear Andrew Wilson. Almost like a TV network where we're all working with synergy and we're all approaching things in a different way. But it's all going towards the same goals. That's the idea. So I hope that it's something that we're able to do eventually. Okay, I think we're ready to go. I screwed up. Fabian's probably been waiting quite a bit. And yes, I would welcome libertarians into that group because I am like partially one. It pisses the libertarians off when someone like me says that I'm a libertarian because I am not a libertarian. They don't like it. It's like stolen valor for them. It really is. Let's see. We'll get Fabian in here. But that's the plan. Again, thank you so much for 10,000. So hope you all enjoyed my rant about the stupid left. People like Destiny. Old thin-skinned Destiny. Old rage quit wiki warrior Destiny. Goku Gaines, thanks for the cheer for $10 or for $1. I really appreciate it. Ah, the wiki warrior. But I'm looking forward to talking to Fabian here. I haven't talked to him in quite some time, so I'm actually interested. I always enjoy talking. One of the things, one of the most interesting shows I've been a part of where I basically just sat in the background was Fabian invited me on and him and his co-host created a PowerPoint going over Senator McCarthy and actually how he was far more correct than people give him credit for. And I thought it was one of the most interesting streams that I've ever been a part of or ever seen because it sounds stupid like they went through a PowerPoint. But having that PowerPoint to have the visual connection with the audio of someone explaining something to you, and it also keeps it more fluid and linear. One of the things I do is I'm like Trump. I do the weave. I meander sometimes. But if you have something like a PowerPoint there to steer you, and it's got all of the facts and information right there in your sources, I thought, for me, I don't know if Fabian still does that sort of content, but man, he was perfect for it. And I'm sure it takes a lot of work. That's a lot of research and a lot of preparation that goes into doing a stream like that. But man, it was different. It was very different. I haven't seen much content like that, and I was very impressed with it. All right, you're gonna lose me visually. So, and we'll get on. Fabian's about ready to go, I think. Hey, what's up? You hear me?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's happening?
Is it at all possible for me to take like a quick pee break?
Pee? You got to piss.
I appreciate. Pretty sorry.
No, go for it, man. No problem.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Sorry. No, I was like the panel ran just a little bit late, so like I literally just left there. I just got to take a quick piss. I'll be right back.
No problem. See, it worked out anyways because I was afraid I stiffed him. But if the panel just got left out, no problem. But he was just on a panel, which I'm sure he'll talk to us about on Wick show, where it was him and Lactoid, who's a libertarian adjacent lawyer. I like Lactoid a lot as well, and they were arguing with Econoboy and some other lefty as to the fallout from the election and why Democrats lost the election. So it'd be interesting to hear him talk about that. As the chat with Fabian's going on, apologies if I don't get to many comments or super chats. I'll try my best, but sometimes in the flow of a conversation with a guest, it's hard to get all those. But having said that, Canisius 4W, super chat for $4.99, says, Rob, I am for one, I'm looking forward to Trump's one a lot of dictator day. Keep rocking it, right? Pack the court, right? End the filibuster, right? That's what the Democrats told me. Right? That's the plan, right?
I didn't wash my hands, but also I sat down and didn't touch my dick. All right, so just know that.
Like, here's a true story. I used to have this big argument with people about whether or not you unbutton your fly to piss or you just unzip, right? And in the context, by the way, I was an unbutton the fly guy. I've switched. I'm now an unzip guy. However, my friend was telling me, we are in the context of being debaters and we're just arguing at 3 a.m. back from a debate trip on this. I'm like, I don't know, it just feels a little handsy, like you're reaching in, grabbing your dick out, and getting a little handsier than I would otherwise be. And he goes, well,
right.
Actually,
you touch it too much, you're playing with it,
That's right. He goes, actually, your penis is cleaner than your hand. And I was like, okay, man, then the next time you want to come shake hands with me, you could just shake my dick. And he was like, wow. No.
That guy 100% lets dogs kiss him in the mouth.
Yeah, that's...
that rationale is like, no, you're not a true conservative because you don't have the right disgust mechanism from a personality trait. You're an infiltrator. You let dogs kiss you on the mouth. You let them sleep in your bed. I see you, you secret Democrat.
He is
hey, Rob, how are you feeling?
I'm doing great.
You must be happy as fuck.
I am happy. He is a vegan Buddhist who's a borderline Antifa guy who works at a prestigious university in administration. So he is not even pretending. I'm doing great.
I was just kidding.
I'm doing great. It was a great night for my political beliefs and what I wanted to happen. But I thought it'd be interesting to talk to you because I could be wrong. I was listening to some of your panel. You didn't vote for Trump, correct? So you didn't really have skin in the game as far as you might prefer.
I voted for Hung Cow because I don't like the fact that he is like, with it, he seems like he would protect and maintain Social Security, but other than that, he seems like a pretty good on libertarian issues and limited government, and so I did vote for Hung Cow, but no, I did not vote for Donald Trump because I have substantive issues. So I won't say that I don't have a dog in the fight, right? I am of the right wing persuasion, and certainly Donald Trump did a lot to court libertarians in this campaign with. Promised to bring a libertarian on. He promised to free Ross Ulbricht. There was certainly a few things, lowered taxations, deregulations, things that are popular with both.
Tariffs gotta piss you off.
The way that I view this,
right?
The way that I view it as a libertarian is that populism won the night, and I'm actually looking forward. I won't say terrified, right? But I am worried and watching this very closely that. We end up, I feel like Trump has just solidified a populism swing in both parties. And I think we are going to see Marxist proposals and socialism that's what the left, that's the vibe, vibes, whatever, that I get, that the left thinks that they were too moderate, that the left thinks that they were too happy with their neoliberal base and their donors and not radical enough. And I think the right is in a position where hopefully libertarians can influence them because of populism to be like, look, we need fiscal responsibility, we need deregulation, we need limited government. And it could also very easily, I think it could swing the other way, which is there's a lot of, people that have a more fascistic bent that are like, hey, we got to get rid of the left at any means necessary. And I think that's where the fight for libertarians is to rein in those aspects of the conservatives as they win, support them the best we can, but remind them, hey, we're here. And if you want our vote, you want our support, you want our voice, you better be fucking slashing regulations and adopting more free market principles.
Yeah. I mean, the way I've looked at this, so it's a weird disparate coalition. Mm-hmm. I feel, for me, the number one issue is corruption. I feel that it's someone who's libertarian adjacent, but not fully libertarian.
We can both be all on for that.
Right. And then you even look at a group that I'm not going to, like the Christian nationalist, right? Or you could look at your left wing, Jimmy Dore type people, or your Aaron Mattei type people. For me, I see this monolithic sort of establishment that is so corrupt that all of us have to head in this direction. We all have to head in the same direction. There comes a point where we all start branching off, though, right? Where it's like, okay, I can't go with you down this path any further. So the first step, I think we're all right to go in that direction. Where can it go from here? Here's a fear that I have. I think that you're starting to see what I would consider establishment light influences, even if you look at not Elon Musk specifically, but what he represents, the wealthy corporatist that's like, hey, I can now have a voice and influence here. I worry if we're not 10 to 15 years from seeing sort of a party switch where all of a sudden, all of those establishment institutions, now you're Jeff Bezos. Maybe he says, hey, I can have voice in the Trump administration. And, you get these sort of...
I'm going to have a 50-50 split on Washington Post. I mean, all my journalists will be hardcore lefties that shit on you and lie. But, I'm going to let a Republican on the Washington Post every now and then give his position. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be funny? And then, then you're a finger snap away from all of a sudden the FBI being like, yeah, we'll go after your opponents, Trump. Shit, why not? And then all of a sudden, when I'm arguing...
Can you fucking blame him?
Oh, no, I wouldn't blame... I know.
2 fucking assassination attempts and an insane amount of lies and the insane amount of lawfare. Obviously I would blame him as a libertarian, sure. but it's like, I'm almost surprised by how let me back up. When I saw Trump and his presidency in 2016, I saw a Trump that was heavily narcissistic, right? Grandiose narcissist. Everything's about me. We're the greatest in the world. And I have since had to change my opinion on that. Because when I saw him bring out Tulsi Gabbard to defend him against Liz Cheney, instead of him trying to do it, he shut the fuck up and he let the expert do it.
Yep.
When I saw him bring in JD Vance to do his hardball interviews because he recognizes that, you call it the weave from the Joe Rogan interview, right? That JD Vance gives pointed, quick answers and switches on them and forces them into a corner. When I saw him put Vivek on college campuses with Charlie Kirk, when I saw him grab RFK to talk about issues of the pharmaceutical industry, I said, this is a totally different Trump than what we looked at in 2016. This is a guy who's learned his lesson about having a bunch of swamp holdovers from the Bush administration like John fucking Bolton in his ear whispering bullshit. And so for like it or love it, I think we're going to see a much, much more effective. I don't know that that's going to be good for libertarianism or free markets or whatever, but we are certainly going to see a far more effective Trump presidency. And that's another reason why I think populism is here to stay, because the lefty cope that Trump is going to destroy the economy with a 10% tariff. Look, I hate tariffs. I think it's a terrible position. I didn't vote for him, and a big part of it is that. But I don't know. I think we're going to see huge changes, and it'll be interesting to see how that occurs and what the left does in that regard.
Yeah,
terrifying, but interesting.
And listen, to anyone in the audience, it's like, oh, how could you be saying this shit today? Look, winning the election's one thing. The hard work starts with what do you do once you're there. Look, obviously, from my perspective, we're going to celebrate for a while, but I've always been of the, this is what frustrated me about so many, quote, never Trump Republicans, was I see a lot of these people that all of a sudden got big balls, during the election that didn't say a goddamn thing from 2016 to 2020 when it mattered. When Trump was in office and all of a sudden he's paying lip service to things like lockdowns and I'm screaming my head off and I have all these constitutional Republicans that are saying, come on, Rob, you got to go with MAGA. They didn't say shit then. And then as soon as it became...
It killed the LP too.
Yeah.
There was so many libertarians that didn't say shit about the lockdowns. And it's that's a big reason. I mean, people want to talk about Chase Oliver, right? Jill Stein beat Chase Oliver. From the conservatives, guys might be like, whatever, who cares about third parties? But as the libertarian here, the idea that you were crushed by Joe Jorgensen is fucking insane.
Yep.
Part of it is because Trump, I think this is a more existential election for a lot of libertarian-leaning people. Part of it is because Trump courted the libertarians, but part of it is that the LP has collapsed. And it's been several issues. I don't want to get into it, but COVID is something that I 100% agree with you. There were a lot of silent fucking people that all of a sudden found their voice in 2023. And it's like, how many of those people are going to gain influence with their grifting bullshit as we try and correct the problems that we've had over the last decade? And how many of those people are going to be in our fucking way?
And for me, the problem is, from the perspective of if you're going to vote Republican, once the primary's over, that's it. For me, that's the time to try to build a coalition and win the election. Once the election's done, that's the time to hold someone's feet to the fire. Now you bring out those criticisms. And Trump, I think, is unique in that he's not very ideological, so he's sort of malleable. So if a big portion of his audience says, what the fuck are you doing banning bump stocks? He's liable to say, oh, okay, right? So you don't want to be...
sucks. I never said anything about bum
right,
sucks.
Exactly.
I didn't mean anything about bum sucks. I just run away from it immediately.
Yeah. So it frustrated me that when he was doing things I disagreed with, like bombing Syria or massive spending or sort of paying lip service to lockdowns, I felt like a voice in the wilderness that was one of his voters. And now so many of those people, all of a sudden they come out when he needs their support to win. Now they're against him. And now that he's in office, it will probably, again, for the short term, I think you're likely to see a lot of never Trump type people, not your Lincoln Project never type Republicans, but maybe your Viveks or DeSantis or Nikki Haley that are sort of on the fence. I think you're likely to see a lot of them jump back on the Trump train. And for me, it's like you have it opposite. Like you should have jumped on the train to get him elected. And now's the time, once he's elected, to say, okay, man, now we're going to hold your feet to the fire and say, you're fucking up. You're not going to have our support. I don't know. I just see it backwards. But that's...
I don't know. I might, under normal circumstances, I would agree with you. I'm hesitant to agree with you in this position because I think he's going to have articles of impeachment on day one. I think he's going to have so much lawfare and so much insanity that it might be conducive, not to me, the libertarian, like I'm a fucking ANCAP, right? To the audience that doesn't know me, hello, I'm Fabian Liberty. I am the final boss of libertarianism in terms of the fact that I want to completely abolish the state. You know, I want to do it slowly in a way that we can actually make it work, but I am a hardcore libertarian, private property rights, privatize fucking everything, but I do sit on the right, and I am fairly conservative in a lot of issues. But so barring that, but from the Republicans, I do think he's going to need a lot of support to get shit done. And I do think under normal circumstances, I would agree with you that this is when you attack the right from the right, and you know what I mean, and don't let him fucking let up. But the shitstorm that we are headed for is going to make 2018 to 2020 look like nothing. You guys better be prepared to talk to your family about the insane, the lies that you heard running up to this campaign, like economic bloodbath, the things you had to, or very fine people,
Liz Cheney
those things you had to debunk.
Yeah.
There are going to be lies that are literally straight from the ether. The media is going to be saying he's doing shit that they're not even going to quote him anymore. Right? Like I guarantee you this is going to be a tough fight for a lot of you. And they're going to be like, he killed people that he didn't kill.
Right.
It's going to get wild. And so I do think, after your celebration, buckle up because it's going to be a fun run.
And let me be clear. Two things, because I see people saying the audience. I'm not saying Ron DeSantis is never Trump. I'm saying some of his supporters are, right? And so there is a portion of Ron DeSantis supporters that are like, I hate Trump. I'll never vote for Trump, blah, 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 blah. And for me, it's like the time to make those criticisms is after he wins. Anyways, I agree with you, though, in what you're saying here specifically, Fabian. I'm saying in the general point, if you had to pick a time to be critical of the guy, the run-up to the election, it should be for coalition building to win. Something I disagree with Andrew Wilson on, by the way. I'm on this show.
This is the perfect time because he's not actually in power, but he's already won.
Right.
So this is the time where you talk the most shit and be like, you better fucking do this promise, right? You better do this thing that you said you were going to do, because he doesn't even have the power to do anything, and remind him of the promises that he made.
It was so frustrating.
I have high hopes. I have high hopes, but I think we're in a precarious 20 years.
I'm friends, and I love the people at the Crucible, and I love a lot of these people that are Christian nationalists. Clearly, we're going to disagree substantially. I debate them all the time on this shit. I know you've debated those sorts of people on those issues before, right? Because as a libertarian, you're going to be at odds with a lot of the stuff they want. But what blew my mind is, I'm trying to, have a strategy. As small of a streamer as I am, I'm like, okay, I have a plan. And my plan is to build as broad of a coalition. I want to bring libertarians. Hey, you should vote for Trump. I want to talk to never Trump DeSantis voters. Hey, you should vote for Trump. I want to talk to Christian nationalists. I want to talk to Bernie bros. Everyone I can. Fuck it, black nationalists. Sure, vote for Trump. Whatever, will hash these disagreements out once our side wins. And meanwhile, I keep getting invites from people I respect that are like, hey man, we want to debate the 19th Amendment a week before the election. Women shouldn't have the right to vote. And I'm like, this is so dumb. You're just giving ammunition to the other side saying, see, women who right now Trump's going to need women to vote. And so the day before the election, I'm on Jake Rattlesnake's show, and Andrew comes in.
Yeah, have you seen this meme? That there's a bunch of people on the right that are like, now that Trump won the election, can we admit that Project 2020?
Yeah, send out the Handmaid's Tale.
What are you doing? It's you know what I mean? It's just so stupid.
Yeah, for me, I don't
really
you have to have an eye for strategy, and it's like the 19th Amendment, the reason it's so dumb to be talking about this literally the week of an election is this. Let's say that you're right, and we should repeal the 19th Amendment, and women shouldn't have the right to vote. It's clearly not going to happen, in the next 24 hours. So you're going to need women to win this election.
Let's do what we can to get women out to vote for Kamala Harris.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And it just, I'm like, why are you wasting your time? Now, granted, the correct answer to that's like, I think Fabian and me are very interesting, right? But let's be clear. I don't think if me and you had this knockdown, drag-out debate 24 hours before the election where you're like, fuck the Republicans, fuck Trump, all about libertarianism, man. I don't think that was going to be the deal breaker because we have such a big reach. But you understand the strategy of why that attitude, from my perspective of trying to get Trump to win, is sort of nonsensical. But enough about the right and divisions on the right. One of the things I think that would be interesting to talk to you about, you just got off a panel, right, on Wick's show, where it was basically lefties asking, where did we go wrong? Like, I thought one of the things you said that was like, I only caught a little bit of it, but I'm sitting there with my wife listening to this and I'm like, yep, when you're like, dude, what the fuck are you guys doing today, the day after? And like, let's look at these data points. Why don't you listen to the people that either didn't go out and vote Democrat or voted for Trump and see what they're saying? And they can't do it.
Right.
They can't.
They can't do it. So there is this cult of scientism that has infected the left to an extreme degree. It seems like the ideology of the left has captured this concept of Saul Alinsky's rule number 6, right? Which is make your opponent play by, make your opponent play to the rules of his own rules, whatever, right? So, attack your opponent in that. And what has occurred is as the left has captured so many institutions, right? Basically all of the institutions are captured by the left in American culture and in politics and in research science and data, et cetera. And one of the things that midwits, which are the communicators of the left, right? The right tends to have a lot of dumb communicators and a couple of high intellectuals. The left tends to have a fuck ton of midwits, people like Destiny, right? They're not stupid, but they're not particularly geniuses either. Right. And what I have noticed is over time, they've leaned heavier and heavier into this concept that I think really kicked off during COVID, during the trust the science era, where they have forgotten, or maybe they never learned, the concept that like data doesn't capture everything. There are lies, damn lies, and then there are statistics. And it's okay to try and be informed by empirical evidence, right? Like that's a noble goal, right? But when the polls are wrong and you're sitting there going, what the fuck happened? And your response is, well, let's look at more left-leaning polls from other lefty intellectuals the day after you fucking lost, instead of going, what did we miss, and talk to the right. And I tried to tell them, I was like, look, there's a reason right-wingers don't answer polls. There's a reason right-wingers don't talk about their beliefs at the workplace. There's a reason right-wingers don't talk about their beliefs in your Discord. You know why? Because they get banned from your Discord.
Yep. Because
they don't trust the pollster, they don't trust the media, and they know that they might get in trouble at the work the moment they out themselves as a conservative. If you want to know what conservatives feel, you have to be willing to talk to the right-leaning individuals or conservatives that speak to these people in the spaces where they open up about their experiences. And staring at another fucking data sheet from institutions that are captured by the left to try and understand what happened is about as dumb as a thing as you can do.
They just don't get it, right? And to illustrate sort of what you're talking about, where sometimes data isn't everything. So when I did policy debate in college, almost everyone at the top, I made it to the top level, which was sort of amazing because most people have done it all through high school at a private school. And then they go to Harvard and they got perfect SAT scores. And here's little old redneck me that got like a 1200 on my SATs, by no means some genius. Right. And I'm debating the top teams in the country, right? The reason that I had success was because some of these people couldn't understand the concept that no matter what, your judge is a human. Period. End of story. They wouldn't do the littlest things like watch your judge while you're talking. Pick up little cues. See what arguments you could pick up that they find interesting. It's okay to lose 90% of the arguments as long as you could articulate the 10% you're winning is what's most important. Storytelling is more important than data. If you could connect to another human being, that's more important. So oftentimes what I would do is I would find success. You also learn that there's data for everything. Like you could debate the highest, smartest people could have infinite time to research, and they're both going to have compelling data that backs up their argument. So there's something more to it. Let me give you an example. You could debate Econoboy, who was on that panel with you, until you're blue in the face about, actually, let's go through the economic data and see how things aren't as bad as it seems right now under the Harris-Biden economy. And actually, the things that are bad is because of Trump and blah, 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 blah. You could make that argument. The problem is your audience, the voting, they're wrong, by the way, they're wrong about that argument. But the problem further than that is their audience is the voting public. And you know what the voting public sees? The Harris-Biden administration told me over and over it's one of the strongest economies ever, and I can't afford groceries. Fuck them. That's what they see. They're like, go ahead.
I was talking to Econoboy about this. Or no, it was Straxium, whatever his name is. I'm not intentionally mispronouncing it. I just don't.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think that was close. But yeah, and he was talking about, it was like, well, wages, outpaced inflation. And I was like, well, no, they fucking did.
They didn't.
And it's like, and I was like, look at the CPI, and I was like, the CPI attempts to count, uses like a 7% metric, but like they attempt to account for the change in products. So like when you look at the consumer price index or the producer price index, they all have these flaws, and because you can't capture these things in a one-to-one. And I was trying to explain, I was like, well, what's a one-to-one? And he was like, oh, great, another anecdote. And they're just ignoring me.
Right. That's not an anecdote. That's the opposite.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, listen, when you look at, I was like, I can tell you, I'm a father and I give my kids mac and cheese sometimes. It's not the greatest decision to give my kids mac and cheese. I'm sorry. I give them, I try and give them healthy stuff. Like I don't give them fruit snacks. I give them like mango dried, like whatever, come at me. Right. But, 5 or 6 years ago, I would have bought mac and cheese for my kids, Kraft mac and cheese. Well, you're an idiot if you buy your kids Kraft mac and cheese today because it's got yellow dye in it. Right. And it's causing cancer. A lot of people are waking up to that. And so what do? They're going to buy like Annie's organic or like the Target brand organic or something like that. It's like, so when you do the CPI and you go, this is Kraft and this is Kraft, these are the same things. They're not the same thing. The product has changed. And a lot of Americans, obesity is down 6%. Massive win, right?
Yep.
Probably a lot of that's Ozempic, but whatever. It's a lot of people are more health conscious. And so when they say inflation, and you go, well, Kraft mac and cheese actually, only went up by this percentage and your wages went up slightly higher than that. It's like, yeah, but I can't buy Kraft mac and cheese anymore because it's poison now. Now I buy the organic mac and cheese that's $3 more because in the 1970s, you used to be able to go to the grocery store and buy real fucking food. And now if you try and buy cheaply, you buy poison. And this is just like one example of the way their data, their metrics are not capturing the reality. And the reality is moms that are going grocery shopping for their kids are making healthier decisions because their food is poison and they're not buying the same shit they used to buy. And that's part of the reason that they're spending $100, $200 more at the grocery store is because they're forced to buy higher quality products to get the same product.
And that's you talking in a world where, one, the data itself is correct, and we can see oftentimes the data is either through incompetence or malfeasance and misrepresented. And second, that the person talking to you is correctly interpreting the data, which in my estimation, 90% of the times when I'm debating someone and they're trying to bring up like economic statistics or immigration statistics, they are not interpreting the data correctly. And I can say that as a layman myself who struggled sometimes not interpreting things. And so there's a bunch of like assumptions that goes in, and that's not even getting to the level that you're talking about. And then on top of all of that, this was a mistake from the Biden administration from like 2022, I started to say, was like, it's amazing to me how tone deaf they are, that they kept going out saying this is one of the greatest economies ever. Because imagine that you're a Biden voter and you're struggling. You're that mom that you talked about, and you're reliable. You're a single mom, you're a reliable Democrat Biden voter, and you're like, man, I'm struggling. What's this party going to do to help me? And you turn on your TV,
and they're telling you you're not
it's your fault.
Struggling.
It's your fault if something's wrong because this economy is doing great. What are the chances that help's coming? And this is the problem in a nutshell.
Dude, you know what it is? It's like, I know this is going to sound woo-woo and crazy, and I hate when the left does this, and so many people do this therapy talk, but it is reminiscent to me, so I'm going to bring it up in this, and know that I'm not trying to psychoanalyze half the country, right? But there is something narcissistic about leftist philosophy and the way that it engages in people. And like, the idea that their response to inflation is to gaslight you into telling you that it's either your fault or that the inflation isn't real is peak Democrat and peak like narcissistic abuser, right? Like it is wild that this is something that we have that is part of their strategy. I don't know. I want to point that out. I didn't ever transition out, so please.
Well, no, but that's exactly. Now, that's one little area. We're talking about the economy. Now, broaden that out to everything. What are the Democrats? You turn on the mainstream media today, what are they talking about? They're like, well, the problem's Latino men. Like, they fucked us. They're racist. And the problem's white men. They're racist. And it's like, it's always, in everything they do, it's just like, look, you're either on our team or it's your fault. You're the bad person. And so, I don't know if you saw, I put in your chat and your stream, I don't know if this came up.
Friend-enemy distinction.
Right. And so, like, with Econoboy specifically, now, imagine the strategy of this for a second. Pisco is going out and he's, just... Look, I like Pisco.
Pisco's gone off the fucking deep end.
He's gone off the deep end. And listen, I don't dislike him as a person. Same with Econoboy. I actually find Econoboy quite a likable person. I like talking to him. I don't say this that
Nah, hold on, pause. Fuck your networking. Pisco is annoying as fuck and he spurgs. He's a piece of shit and he lies all the time. Econoboy, you can have a rational conversation with. Like, I know you're trying to fucking maintain all those networks.
Well, no, it's not even just that. I'm just
teasing you, but still.
People like you, this is what people don't understand. I say this all the time. I'm like, I have aggressive positions, but I'm actually a fucking softie. And I tell people all the time, there are people like you. There are people like Andrew Wilson. If you think I'm too hard-nosed, you're not going to like to see what's on the other edge of me because you're going to be like, someone like you is going to be like, I don't give a fuck. Fuck you. And so, like, I try, in my real life, I'm not just doing it for network. I try to, even someone like Destiny, who if anyone deserves derision is probably the top person, I still am like, look, I don't wish him personally hard feelings. Anyways, imagine this. Pisco with all of his bullshit that he's doing, selling out any shred of integrity he has. Oh my God, Tony Hinchcliffe said this joke, therefore, and he's trying to make this all caps posting on X, just being a dumbass.
And then the next day being like, check the White House transcript for the apostrophe. And you'll know that Joe Biden didn't actually call half of America trash.
Now, Pisco's a little...
I mean, like...
Go ahead. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, I was piggybacking off of that. Like, there is this, there's this wonderful YouTuber that so many people in your chat are deeply going to love, right? And that is ContraPoints. I'm sure you guys love all of her left-wing pro-trans stuff, but she said something that I think says so much in one sentence, and it's one of the greatest things she's ever said, which is that the left doesn't want power; they want to endlessly critique power.
Yes,
and it was a moment of like pure unadulterated truth that pissed off so many people on the left, and that she couldn't even understand like why that occurred. But it is left-wing philosophy is in critical theory that has affected and it's affected a lot of people on the right, all right, and you guys don't even realize it, but especially the left, is this cyclical pattern of historical material dialectics, right? If you want to learn more about dialectics without reading 1,000 books, just read Socialism, Scientific and Utopic by Engels, okay, and just read part 1, and you'll have a pretty good grasp of what the dialectic is from the Marxist perspective. And it is, after, the Frankfurt School and Antonio Gramsci's prison papers and countercultural hegemonic thing, they moved that same process into race. That's how you get critical race theory, into gender. That's how you get feminism, into family issues, etc. And so what has occurred on the left is they have become captured by this philosophy, right? An objectivist friend of mine says all the time, they're like, I can see Hegel speaking through him. I can see this philosophy. Once you recognize it, you see the philosopher speaking through them. And that is what has happened on the left, is that they have completely disassociated themselves with a desire for reason and truth as a highest order value. What is the highest order value isn't necessarily gaslighting you specifically. It isn't necessarily about like circumnavigating the truth because they hate the truth. It is about this process of this dialectic process of finding the thesis, finding the presumed antithesis, and synthesizing a new lie that maintains both of the contradictions, because they don't even realize that they believe contradictions can occur in reality, that A can equal not A. And that is the greatest threat that is there, that undergirds all of this bullshit, this rules for thee but not for me, this because, like, how can a rational person like Pisco, assuming he's a rational person, he's not, but assuming he is, right? How can someone like that in one sentence be against Tony Hinchcliffe and what he said, and then do this super fucking major critique against Joe Biden? And it's because it is the process, the philosophy speaking through him, that the friend-enemy distinction has found the enemy, and there is a deep desire to subvert the narrative and subvert the argument by finding these nitpicky things and pushing it, and they don't care that there's a contradiction because they're blind to it. They're blind. Like, you think they're being evil for power, and I'm telling you, the philosophy has literally affected the way that they think. They don't see it.
Well, and I remember talking to you once, and you were talking about sort of the hierarchy of levels of people that are involved in this, right? And I'll give you a chance to explain that, because I think it'll be very interesting. But one of the things is, even within those same strata of levels, there's different levels of sort of intelligence, or I don't even think intelligence is the word, the ability to sort of see through a narrative of the story you're trying to tell to a logical end. So Pisco's on a different level than the two people I'm about to talk to, which is Econoboy and Pondering, right?
There you go.
And I have to bring it up.
If you want to pull that up.
Yeah. So what happens is, here's what I was trying to say. Pisco understands, right, that he's trying to make this defense where he's like, for whatever his rationale is, actually Joe Biden included this apostrophe, blah, blah, blah. He didn't call everyone garbage. He didn't do that. And so then he brings in his two Progressive Victory PAC co-hosts, and Econoboy, one of the very first things he says is, well, but 50% of MAGA is garbage. 50% of Trump voters is garbage. And Pondering's like, well, they're certainly all immoral. I don't know if I'd use the word garbage. Now, from Pisco's perspective, you just tried to run defense and say, well, Biden didn't actually say they were garbage. And then the two people that don't have the foresight as him comes on his very show, on that same show where he's running defense, and it's like, well, but they all are garbage. Or at least they're all immoral, or they're all moronic. And it's like, so the reason I bring this up in the context of you on Wick's panel, it's rich for me to hear Econoboy going, well, you know what we should do? We should look at this data, the exit polling, and we should look at this. And for me, it's like, hey, Econoboy, why don't you take a step back and introspect yourself and see how you literally called 50% at a minimum of the people that voted for the other guy garbage, and maybe that gives you some sort of clue as to what those people that didn't vote for you, because you can't help yourself. And to me, it's the same rationale. It says, well, this economy is great, and if you have a problem with it, it's your fault. And the border's secure, and if you have a problem with it, it's your fault. You're a racist. And foreign policy is amazing, and if you have a problem with that, that's because Russia's paying you, and you're a piece of shit that's spreading every single problem that an average American, who's not necessarily someone who's deeply looking into shit, it's just shit they feel in their everyday life. When they look at the Democratic Party saying, hey, if you don't agree with us, you're a piece of shit or you're a moron. And I think that, like, that's not the only reason they lost. But for me, to watch you say, like, Econoboy, why don't you listen to people on the other side? And me knowing that just 4 days ago he was saying 50% of people on MAGA are garbage, it's like, holy fuck, if anything, today would be a day to say, whoa, even if just for strategic reasons, maybe I should reevaluate how I'm approaching it. But they can't do it. They absolutely can't.
Well, like I saw a tweet, and I think you liked the tweet or something, my response, right? That Destiny put out. He just put out his mother's email.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Right?
Terrible.
And it was like, and they were like, and he put out the whole argument that his mother had put out. And they were like, and he was like, look, and he didn't call her dumb or anything, but he was just like, look at this. Like, these are the arguments I deal with at Thanksgiving. Right. And it's her giving an entire thing about, January 6th and the BLM riots, and that there was a disconnect or a cognitive dissonance, or, unequalness and unfairness, however you want to put it. And there was some other things, and she talks just like any fucking boomer that reads Facebook memes would talk like, right? Like,
half the people at the bar down the street, like, that's what the people
like
that talk like
they
that.
just see they see that they're playing a rigged game,
Yep.
and they're angry, and they don't know all the fucking details. And like, and I'd responded, and it's not, my response isn't really particularly like insightful or anything. I was just kind of like, what the fuck, dude? But what I think is interesting about that is that it does kind of showcase that 20, 30 years ago, before much of this philosophy had really fully captured the left, right? We shared a kind of common values of like respect in such a way that like you just wouldn't see a talking head do that.
Yep.
Right? Like that is something that like like I'm not really particularly a Southerner. I'm from Virginia, and I have, but like, just the idea of putting your mother on blast for clout or for comedy and like what is intended to be a private communication and just fully putting it out there. It's like, and they were like, well, and there was all these comments coping, like, well, she put half of this on Facebook. It's not a big deal. She's been on his stream. And it's like, I'm not saying she's mad. I'm not saying she's feeling disrespected. I'm saying that we're dealing with an entirely different type of person than we were 40 years ago.
Right.
Because normal people 30, 40 years ago would just never have done that. They would never have even thought to do something like the lines of what is acceptable in discourse in terms of respect, order, argumentation, and of course in the pursuit of truth have completely blurred to the point of astigmatism, right? Like they have blurred to the point of like not being there. But yeah, that was the 4 categories of woke that I was talking
and
about.
it's like to further go off that, I mean, you're absolutely right. So just to be clear, the cope that they were saying, well, she was going to put it on Facebook anyway. What, to her 3 followers, right? Like Destiny's someone who has hundreds of thousands of followers. This is an entirely different game than the 3 people from your town see a post. Now, having said that, it's a pet peeve of mine. People I know in my real life that are putting their personal bullshit on Facebook, like denigrating even cousins or neighbors. It's like, dude, it's a bad way to live. You shouldn't do that. If you have disagreements within your own family, keep that shit in-house. For me, family's family. I don't give a fuck if they're the dumbest, most annoying people in the world. That's my family. I can fuck with my family, you can't. And I will never air that dirty laundry. That's sort of what you're talking about, the old vision of that. But to take this to the logical extension, if you're someone like Destiny and you're willing for whether it be comedy or for clout to sort of put your mom on the spot like that, what are you willing to do to people that you have no connection and disposition towards liking? What are you willing to do? And so you could see when you heard Destiny's comments after the Trump assassination, he was spiraling. Right? Like the news stories aren't, and they're so used to, when you're pro-establishment, you're used to victory after victory. So all of a sudden you got this bad news cycle where it's like, yeah, the Supreme Court decision went the way you didn't want. Now the same dude that I've argued with tons of times about the corruption of these institutions, all of a sudden the Supreme Court's corrupt. He made fun of me when I gave evidence of the FBI's double standard, but now it's the Supreme Court's corrupt. And then you have the assassination attempt of Trump, where you can see that he looks like a fucking boss when he gets up and yelling fight. Then you see Joe Biden's terrible debate performance. So Destiny's spiraling. And what happens? He lashes out. He's in these weird sort of dynamic relationships with people online. He can't back down. He has this persona. So someone says, ha ha ha, fuck you. Now I'll up the intensity to the point where you're saying, fuck around, find out. You're a Trump supporter. Even if it was my mom there, fuck them. That's what they get for going. They know that they're putting their life in risk supporting this insurrectionist. And it's like, he can't back down. He can't apologize because of who his persona is. And the problem is, it's not just Destiny. It's like you said on that level there. Maybe Destiny's that vanguard. But that lower level, they don't know how to differentiate. And so all of a sudden people are showing me like from Destiny's Reddit account or whatever, page or whatever. And people are saying shit like this. Well, we tried to use lawfare to take Trump out, but the Supreme Court basically made him God, Emperor, King. So now we have to go to the next step. And it, like, for me, I'm not someone here I'll finish with this. I'm not someone that's here that's like, stochastic terrorism, but then fuck that, say what you want. I think you should be a little careful, but say what you want. If you say, fuck the state, and then some lunatic goes out with a car bomb and does something horrible, that's not your fault. But if you're Destiny and you see how many people are getting radicalized in your community and you're making fun and basically being super ambiguous about whether you thought this assassination attempt was good, I think you could start to see a really dark space that illustrates what so many people think when they look at the Democratic Party and sort of the voices and the faces of it. They're like, these people are fucking unhinged.
Well, so I think a couple of things here, right? Like in terms of like the stochastic terrorism position. I agree with you that, like, you know, free speech ought be enshrined, you know, and that, you know, second and third order consequences, you can't like, you can't lay this like legal burden upon them. But one of the things that is so interesting about the poverty of philosophy, you know, to borrow a term from Marx, that we have in America today, because no one learns philosophy anymore. No one knows philosophy. Like, if you haven't gone out and tried to learn philosophy, and I don't even mean like in a fucking college, because I've taken philosophy classes in college and they're hilariously bad. If you want to know, great place to start in my never mind, actually. Anyways, but like I was like, nah, I don't even know who you guys are. But yeah, is that like people have such a difficult time with the separation of is ought distinction. Right. The left, especially, I think it's a symptom of statism, you know, and I'm whatever. I'm a libertarian. You're going to get libertarian opinions from me. But I do think it is a symptom that very often I'll say things like, this is this way. And the assumption that many conservatives, and especially the left, have is that there's an implication that the state or that some violent apparatus ought enforce what is the morally good or morally, you know, or enforce against the morally bad thing there. Right. And it's like, no, we should be able to look at somebody like Destiny, that or any of these people, right? I don't want to pick on Destiny specifically, you know what I mean? I'm not a clout chaser. I don't give a fuck. He doesn't like me anymore. You know, but that's because I fucking dog him on philosophy usually, and he can't do anything about it.
He doesn't like to talk to people that he can't push around. It doesn't matter what the subject is. That's what happens. You know?
But right, but like what we have seen is with this is ought distinction thing breaking down. You know, it's like I should be able to say, we'll just use Destiny again as an example. Yeah, that's a morally corrupt piece of shit thing to do. Right? It's like we used to have this understanding, you know, from like the ADL, for whatever fucking theories you have about the big noses aside. I don't mean you personally, I mean the listeners. Right? They defended the Ku Klux Klan. Right? Virulent anti-Semites. And you can say, oh, it was actually a conspiracy to get rid of... Shut the fuck up. What I mean to say is that, like, we used to understand that the way to deal with the Ku Klux Klan after they had lost political influence and power, right, was to let them do their demonstration, walk by them in the park with our kids and go, those are bad people. Those aren't good people. Those are fucked up people with fucked up ideas, and walk by. And the left has completely forgotten that, right? Like because they are tied to a complete acceptance of violence. And I mean this primarily violence of the state, but also, you know, Antifa and all this other shit, you know, violence in a more raw, realistic, or more, you know, in your face kind of perspective, where, you know, they say that's horrible and you shouldn't do that. And they immediately think that you talking about like arrests or conviction or being banned from a social media platform or something. And it's like, no, what I'm saying is everyone should look at you and spit on the ground in front of your feet so that you never get to walk on a clean sidewalk again. That doesn't mean I think you should be banned. And that doesn't mean that I think that you ought to be beaten or arrested or fined. And it's like, that is something that seems to be so missing from the conversation that I hope libertarians can bring back in. And it's something that like the Christian nationalists have forgotten too, is they're moving very rapidly towards fascism, because they have forgotten that Christians were supposed to police their brother, police themselves, be of the world and not in it, right? And look at disdain and banishment and separate themselves from hedonistic, fucked up people. And instead they're like, well, the world is crumbling and they're using power and I'll use power too. So let's ban pornography and let's use the state to police people's moral behavior. And I'm hoping with Trump, and I'm hoping with this growing libertarian influence, that like now is the time that libertarians can push in and like make more people realize that there are solutions here that aren't these wide sweeping violent actions like using fines, censorship, and, you know, and legal things as a means of punishing our enemies.
So there's two distinctions I want to make here. There are people that operate within the state and people that are operating in positions of leadership who have done things that I think it is justified to use the state to go after. I'll give you an example. If you see a director of the FBI that engages in an act of corruption for political power, I am all for retribution on that person within the legal scope of, I don't mean go punch him in the face. I mean, yeah, he broke laws. He should be held accountable. That's different than what I see the appeal of a lot of right-wing people, maybe Christian nationalists would be one group of that, that'll say things like this. Well, they did this to us, and so therefore we need to do it to them.
We can do this to them.
So they say, you had Antifa, you had BLM riots, we get riots. And I tried to say, the problem is there is a moral failure in that. It is not morally justified, but it's so hard to convince people of that. So then you try to take it to the next level, which is the strategic value. The problem is when you control the state, when you control our institutions that make up most of our power and culture, you can get away with shit. So lefties that are the foot soldiers of what these institutions want, they could go out and burn down cities and only a small handful will ever be punished and in the lightest possible way because they're basically doing what these people want. But if you're a right-winger or for that matter, an anti-establishment lefty that's antithetical to what those people with power's beliefs are, they're going to bring the fucking hammer down on you. And that's what so many people found out on January 6th. A small handful of them justifiably got in trouble for engaging in acts of violence, but the vast majority didn't do hardly anything at all. It doesn't matter. They were cracked down upon. And so I try to encourage people, look, you don't want to give in to that. But it also works in a way as if you're talking about overtaking these institutions, having them be used. Strategically, it doesn't make sense because I think that one of the lessons is the failures of the Democratic Party last night is that the average person, even if they're not analyzing this like you, which is at one level, I'm at a level not quite that deep, but I'm sort of near where you're talking, but most people are just at
continue stroking my ego. I won't interrupt you.
I just mean like you're looking at it more from a more well-read. I feel I have a very good gut feeling and I have some limited reading, so I know what you're talking about. But most people, it's just surface, and it's not that any of those are wrong, by the way. The surface level people are right, that they, like you said about Betsy's mom. You feel like the system's been fucking me over. I can't put my thumb on it exactly, but you're right. Your gut's right. What these people see is they'll say something like this. Our kids are being indoctrinated by this radical LGBT fucking ideology in schools. So what we're going to do is take over the schools and indoctrinate people into Christian values. That's what we're going to do. And I'm like, but the problem is, what happens is the great swath of people in the middle that are currently disgusted by the left, they're going to be like, oh, well then we're disgusted by you as well. That goes too far for us. And so strategically, I think what ends up
history doesn't.
Eventually it will.
History shows they'll pick a side.
Well,
over and over and over again. People are a lot more malleable. I think I want to love Americans. I want to think that they're great people and that they would never do this, but the Germans were no different than you and I.
But the problem is, let me rephrase. It would take time. It would take time and cultural. It would take time and cultural and political victories to get enough people to be malleable to that. Right now, like let me give an example. Right now, the large swath of people in the center could see the actions of BLM and getting away with it, or Antifa, and say that fucking disgusts me. But when they see January 6th, they're like, oh, well, there's no high ground because now both sides are fucking lunatics, right? And the problem is, you have even proportionally, you could see that when it comes to the amount of violence, the disproportionate effect on what our institutions did about that violence, it doesn't matter. To a large swath of people that are just looking at it as a surface level, it's like both sides are lunatics. So you lose that sort of competitive ground when it comes to something like an election. I think at this point, I'll finish with this. At this point, what I don't want to see is, I think one of the reasons the Democrats lost was because it's you're either with us or you're against us mentality. And if the Republicans go the direction of some of these people I'm talking about, that's like, let's tell all the gay people to fuck off. Let's tell women they shouldn't have the right to vote. If that becomes a serious voice within the Republican Party, even if you're listening and you're like, well, I kind of believe that. I kind of think that the LGBT agenda's gone too far. Maybe we need to tell gay people we don't want... the problem is you're going to lose that sort of advantage that you have right now because people are going to say, oh, fuck. Well, this side's made up of, authoritarian lunatics as well.
So I think I disagree here. I want to zoom all back to the Edward Snowden, right?
Okay.
we'll follow this thread and we'll make it real quick. So Edward Snowden, we know, proved unequivocally, along with oh my God, who's the Brazilian guy that founded the
Greenwald, Glenn Greenwald.
Glenn Greenwald, thank you. Yep. Right, along with Glenn Greenwald, a German guy, and et cetera, proved unequivocally that James Clapper lied to Congress, that he 100% said that we were not wittingly spying on Americans. The highest level of treason that someone at the NSA could ever commit is to lie to Congress. And the thing is the Republicans there knew he was lying. That's why they asked those questions a bunch of times, because they're not allowed to divulge state secrets, but they wanted to make sure that he was on the record with Congress lying his ass off. So what happened to James Clapper is the Republicans got power and he quit of his own volition, retired, and then got a job at CNN.
Yeah.
Now let's compare that to Steve Bannon, who was using presidential authority that every lawyer agreed he had, because his conversations with the president were under the purview of presidential authority, and that he did not need to go before Congress, and the reason was because those were privileged conversations.
Correct. That
Congress didn't have the right to those answers to, and that if they wanted to, they needed to take them to court, or they needed to file. There's a process. I'm sure
Eric Holder
somewhere
did the
going,
same thing with
actually, you're wrong. Right. And so that guy goes to prison for 4 years, just gets out.
4
right?
months, but yeah.
This is the kind of thing that's scary, is because this is our moment to do something good for the country. And our moment to do something good for the country is to recognize that we got to get rid of similar situations like this, where and to fight our nature in utilizing executive power and Congress, et cetera, to go after our enemies the way that the Democrats did. But that's not enough. You have to reform those institutions by defanging them, right? Like when the Obama administration went after conservative NGOs with the IRS and specifically targeted them, hoping to cripple, conservatives' ability to engage meaningfully in elections by having them under massive audits and trying to bury them in legal frameworks. Like, this is where we have to start defanging institutions. And the fear that I have is very much similar to what you talked about with the trans stuff. And this is where I begin to disagree with you, is that I don't think people go, oh, January 6th, oh, BLM, both sides are crazy, therefore I'll sit this out. I think what ends up happening is they go, both sides are crazy, so I'll pick my crazy side. I'll pick the crazy side that's going to keep fucking drag queens from flopping their dick out in front of my kids. Because if I got to pick between dicks in front of my kids at the public library and there is no libertarian option of like, hey, we should just, hey, we should expand freedom of choice in schooling, and we should have vouchers, and we should, defund the Department of Education, so that, and lower property taxes, and, have all of these, pseudo libertarian positions. And if all that's given to them is pick, we either get rid of it all or you allow this to happen to your kids, that's the type of shit where they just go, yeah, fuck it, we'll use the power of the state. And so as a libertarian, with Trump winning and likely winning the House and almost certain and having
Definitely
won the Senate,
yeah.
This is where we come in, and we have to be like, dude, there are two paths you can go down, and the one you need to fucking go down is reducing state power in these institutions, because use them at your own risk, because they will be used against you, and they already have.
I don't disagree, actually. I think there's maybe just our interpretation. I'm not saying that people won't pick a side. I'm saying that the advantage you had to people more likely coming to your side is lost, and you're forcing, and so more people that otherwise would be on your side. You're right, some of them are still going to say, fuck it, I don't care, I'm still on your side. But there's an awful lot that would said, I otherwise would have been on your side, but now I listen to, Jake Tapper or Liz Cheney that's like, oh, now we could point to this one. Because for me, this is a conspiracy theorist in me, but I don't give a shit. I think this will be borne out in history to be true. I think that what happened on January 6th, certainly there were actors that acted of their own volition, but if you understand mob mentality, I think that there were state actors that were intentionally inciting people to engage in acts of violence, and they know enough about mob behavior to know if you intentionally have a lack of police presence and then encourage people in the right ways, you could get a predictable outcome that causes acts of violence. You let them get to the Capitol, and then you say, okay, now they're into the Capitol. Now we'll crack down on it, and you have your excuse. Now, all of a sudden, you have the image that you need to treat these people like treasonous state traitors, and it allows, the silencing of all conversation about election integrity. It allows sort of an end to talk about censoring disinformation, which would then be used so much on the pandemic, and, et cetera. It gets to that sort of authoritarian impulse.
Let me respond to that, which is, in the bounds of what I can say on YouTube. Right. So instead of putting forward a conspiracy theory, I mean, I think the best way to look at these things is to look at incentives. Right. And so, I think all of the incentives match with your theory. I think all of the incentives match with your and I think that is true of many institutions. I mean, we have Twitter files. And Twitter files, by the way, is Donald Trump's fault. Like, Donald Trump signed CISA, right? Like, and that is one of the things that I think is going to be interesting about a second Trump presidency, because if he had Tulsi Gabbard in the room and he had fucking, JD Vance in the room, maybe not JD Vance, but certainly Vivek and Tulsi Gabbard and RFK, they'd have been like, hey, dude, this is going to be used to censor you, like, especially Tulsi. So I do think he has a much, much stronger team going in, and he's probably going to be prone to less of these errors because he had a real bad problem of trusting, holdovers around him that he should never have trusted. But I think.
I mean, and I'll just be clear. I don't. You're absolutely right.
Sorry, I have to do two conversations in my head. I have to think about the response and think about what I can.
What you're allowed to say. And so I'll just say this: if you look at the guy that was tasked with defense, Capitol Chief's son, he seems to suggest that there was an intentional effort to not give him the proper amount of security. So it lines up in sort of.
Oh, there's a fuck ton of it. We don't know what I was reticent to say, but I'll just say we don't know whether or not they were intentionally acting. What we do know is that the FBI does that shit all the time. They did it with the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot, where they grabbed homeless crazy people and someone that lived in a dry cleaning facility and then drove them around, gave them vehicles, came up with the idea for the bomb so that they could arrest them, and I think we've all heard this phrase 150 times every time there's a crazy mass shooting that doesn't make sense, which is he was known to the intelligence community. What the fuck does that mean? Right. And it's like, oh, we had a retired FBI agent in a Discord server, and some guy named Sandman helped him write his entire manifesto and told him what guns to pick out. And it's like, okay, we're not investigating that anymore. Like, okay.
That always blows my mind.
These institutions are corrupt, and they need to be run through. And we need to push Trump and the Republicans to say, these institutions, like at a minimum, we need to be firing half of these people. Like, we do not need to be trying to put our people in charge of corrupt institutions that are corrupt and have been corrupted for 30, 40 years from all the way top to the bottom. What we need to be doing is defanging this shit. The amount of shit that the CIA, the NSA, Department of Homeland Security, there are so many 4-letter agencies that literally none of you guys, not 3-letter, 4- and 5-letter agencies that none of you guys have heard of.
Yep.
There's
CISA. 95% of America
York...
has no idea who CISA is.
Oh yeah, sorry, I brought that up, but yeah, I didn't realize that nobody even knows.
That's the point. You're right.
There was an article about a year ago. I want to say it was Wall Street Journal, but it could be any of them. It's one of them, right? Where they talked about how they couldn't track down every government agency in America. Recognize what the fuck I just said. Yeah. That there's so many government agencies that a team of journalists who have access to FOIA requests and all of the public documents don't know how many government agencies we have. That's how fucking bloated these intelligence communities and executive agencies are. It's like Elon Musk said when he was talking, about people leading up to the election about the Department of Government Efficiency. I'm kind of iffy on it. I feel like you don't need the department. You can just have some people do it because I don't want
Another
Democrats
department
in charge of a department of yeah, it's like, what does the Department of Government Efficiency look like when Democrats are in it?
Right.
Make sure the DEI is extra DEI. Like, I don't know how but he's like, you can throw a fucking dartboard and you will find a government agency that doesn't need to exist. And so, like, yeah, like, this is our moment to be like, okay, you've got the power now. Like, as Ron says in Parks and Recs, like, slash it. Like, there's so much shit that needs to be cut.
I don't disagree that now. I will say,
and I'm hopeful for it.
The pushback is right. Like, listen, there is a way to thread this needle, I think, but the pushback is, and it's difficult to argue against this. Like, fucking revenge is cathartic. It is. And if you've been on the losing side of shit for a long time, it's a hard case to be like, if you're someone, not me, let's say you're some fucking dude that went to jail for January 6th that did dick all, right? And you spent a year and a half in solitary confinement there, had a really horrible time, right? And you're going to see riots, right? You're going to see riots here with Trump winning. It's going to happen. It would be cathartic for you to be like, throw every one of those motherfuckers, even if they were nonviolent and they were at that protest, throw them in jail for a year and a half. Every one of them. And any politician that like spoke up against Trump, investigate them and throw their ass in prison too. And I get that. It's hard for me to tell that guy that spent a year and a half, or Steve Bannon, who spent, a couple months in prison. It's hard for me to look at him when he says, oh, so I got a subpoena and I didn't comply, so I go to jail for 2 or 3 months? Fuck it then. Throw subpoenas out left and right, Trump. Throw them everywhere. And anyone who says no, throw their ass in prison. Throw their ass in prison for 3 months. I understand that it's cathartic, and to some degree, I think some of those people deserve it. So there is a way to thread the needle, but you can't, I agree with you totally. You can't be like, well, we'll just put our dude in charge of the FBI. And then, you know what we'll do? I say this all the time, but you're right. It's fucking worthless to say this because it's a foolish game that I continue to fall in over and over again, where I'll implore to people that I think are being like above board in good faith, like, look at the fucking double standards you're employing. So like someone like Pisco or a litany of other lefties, it doesn't have to be him. I'll say shit like this. Well, let's say that Trump gets in there and all of a sudden he says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pay to craft a dossier that says that my political opponents fucked some hooker in a bed and got pissed on, right? And then I'll have some, Chinese spy or Russian spy, whatever. They're going to say, yeah. And by the way, those people are working with the enemy to fucking subvert your country. And then I'm going to have my FBI leaders spy on these motherfuckers. And they're going to go through their entire life and all their friends' life. They'll find out crimes that people did 10 years ago, not connected to this whatsoever. Fuck it, arrest them all. How would the left feel? They would be like, and so here's a strategy that they employed. Like Pisco constantly, when I'll be like, time for FISA warrants, right? He'll be like, I demand that you condemn that right now. Condemn that. And my answer to that's like, fuck you, I owe you nothing. Now, to my audience, I'll say, of course I'm against that. Of course I would be there defending those left-wingers saying, no, you can't do that. Just because it was done to Trump, I can't support Trump getting illegal FISA warrants. But I'll be damned if the people that stood there and sneered and chuckled and made excuses for, if I'm going to owe them anything. I don't owe them a goddamn thing. Right. So it is tough. There is this impulse, I think, and I could, like you already said this about Trump. I mean, the dude, he came a hair's breadth from being dead right now. So can you really blame him for being like, fuck you, motherfuckers. I'm going to go balls out. Whatever I feel like doing, fuck it, go after. He won't, though. And it's not that he won't because he doesn't have a bent for vengeance. He just goes about it in a different way. And he's going to have people around him, I think, that steer him in the direction of like, there's a way to legally go after people within the bounds that you think have acted corruptly. But you can't just be like, tit for tat, we'll do the exact same thing to them. And there's smart people that I respect that are like, nope, nothing will change. I'll say this and we'll see what you think about this. To me, there's two differences here. And this is difficult. I talked to Casimir the other day because when you're talking about the difference between is and not, that's a very fucking difficult concept, even for someone like me that isn't sort of looking into the philosophy of libertarianism. So I'll explain one of the things Casimir said. Let's say you have a shop owner, right? And he sees a man starving and it's nothing for him to give the man a little piece of bread so that he doesn't die. But he doesn't. And he's under no moral obligation to give his property to this man. And so there should be no legal ramification to this shitty owner for not, and the dude starves to death, right? But what you do is, it's not that you have a legal obligation. Everyone ostracizes this dick after that. They say, you know what? We will refute. We'll spit on the ground you walk on. We'll say, fuck you. No one will deal with you anymore. And so you've solved that without violating sort of a non-aggression principle, because you haven't gone after their property. You have just sort of ostracized them in a voluntary way. That's difficult for someone like me to understand, and for a lot of people to understand. And so if you apply that to sort of the idea of cancel culture, people like me said cooler heads will prevail, but they didn't. And so what happened was the left never understood the consequences of cancel culture until it was employed against them. Now all of a sudden with the Bud Light attacks or the John, but that's different than should the state be going out doing shit. People voluntarily coming together and saying, fuck you, Bud Light, I'm not going to purchase your product, is different than having the state say, we're in charge now and we don't like DEI, so we're going to use the state to criminalize Bud Light out of existence. Like, do you see a different there for people's voluntarily associations versus sort of retribution through the state like that?
Yeah. So I agree completely, but I want to expand on it. And so one of the things that I think is a genuine, let's put my, like, I'm a Christian conservative Republican that believes in the state hat on, right? And what has happened is we see that values are gone. We see that we used to grow up in a society that was a high trust society. This isn't something that you can easily, identify, but it's something you kind of feel, right? I think everybody, they say, oh, social media, the left says you're crazy for thinking crime has gone up. Crime's actually gone down, even though we had to, redo our numbers that showed the crime went up. Right, but even still, right? Crime reporting can go down and crime can go up. There's all these other things. Again, their obsession with data. But what has occurred is I think everybody, maybe not everybody, but most people, they feel it, right? They feel a change in the culture. They feel like they used to be able to go out and get smiles at a local corner store. They feel that they used to be able to maybe not leave your door unlocked, right? Because that was always kind of fucking stupid. When people are like, well, I used to leave my door unlocked and I don't anymore. I'm like, well, you might be retarded, because like thieves have always existed. Like, lock your fucking door. Right? But there was a feeling that nothing would happen if you did it. Right? And so like the and it's not one thing that has done it, It's not California making petty theft under $600 changed us from a high trust to a low trust society because of the looting. It's a confounding variables. And what has occurred is that the knee-jerk reaction of both the right and the left is to try and fix a cultural breakdown, a breakdown of culture and values with power, to enforce those cultural values, to return to a sense of normalcy, or to return or establish order. And the problem is that it becomes a game of whack-a-mole. Every time you use the state and you craft some legislation to try and control and craft people, it comes from when Christians do this and they say, oh, we got to ban porn, right? I don't disagree with you that porn is bad.
Sure.
What I'm saying is that when you do this, you are exactly the same as communist Russians. And the reason you're exactly the same as them is that this comes from an axiomatic position that people can be controlled at their very core, and that the morality in society can be controlled in that. And what actually happens is that you have all of these unintended consequences that you didn't foresee. And it becomes this game of whack-a-mole where you need more power, you need more laws, you need more control as problems get worse, because you're not actually addressing the issue. The issue, I would say, predominantly is a poverty of philosophy, but also is that breakdown in culture, right? It is that our culture has changed because of those policy things. So like capitalism, the market, it does not provide you what is good. It provides you what an individual wants most, right? Whenever you take a tax, whenever you tax money for whatever program, whatever enforcement, whatever regulation, whatever it is, what you have essentially done is you've taken an individual choices and you've taken them away. And what you have done is you've taken an individual's most valued wants, their most valued needs, and you have moved them somewhere else into society that is less valued. and this is just a fact. This is an is, not an ought, right? This is saying that when I take money from you and then I do it for a welfare program, it's like you hear the people go, well, I would gladly pay that tax. It's like, cool, then make it voluntary. Oh, well, see, it can't be voluntary that tax is for welfare or whatever. Yeah, it's because you might pay it, even though I know you're full of shit, but you might pay it, but the person next to you won't. And so you're not saying you're glad to pay the tax. You're saying you're glad to use the threat of violence and a gun to force that person away from what it is that they value most into something that they value less than whatever it is. Whatever they were going to buy with that money now has to go towards this, collapsing, retarded government program that doesn't work and only causes more problems. And so I would say to that store owner thing is like, Casimir's right and wrong in this analogy, because the only way Casimir's right is if the culture of the people are of a high trust society and they choose to do that. And it is the knee-jerk reaction of moralists to say, well, I can't fix the culture, but I can use power to make you do that. And it's the same thing that the socialist does. And it's like neither of you are addressing the problem. And the longer you continue to not address the problem, our culture, our values, our communities, our beliefs, the more problems you're going to get, because you're never going to fix the problem. You're just going to fix one and it's a hydra. You're just going to create more problems.
See, I agree with like 90% of what you're saying, but I don't agree at the complete level, which will always lead to, this is one of my favorite meta arguments when I'm arguing with a real libertarian as someone who's just like, I don't know, minarchist or libertarian adjacent. The criticism that you're going to have to deal with is looking at the most extreme situations and seeing if there's any time where your ethics wouldn't apply for a reason of pragmatism. But the criticism for me that you're always going to be offered is there's always this threshold problem. So when I say, no, there is a time where actually, in that instance of the man starving to death, I don't mind. This is the seventh guy that starved to death on this store owner's foothold. I don't mind saying, give him the fucking bread. Take the bread and give it to him this one time, right? And you would say, but now there's this problem of threshold. How do you determine when that threshold's been met? And so, but I think
what I'm actually saying right now, very quick, and I'll let you finish. Sure. What I'm actually saying is address the problem.
Oh, I know.
There's a reason that it's the seventh man starving.
That's right.
And then people come in and they go, I will use violence to solve this problem. And they won't. They don't solve the problem. All they do is give bread to these people, and then they make the problem worse.
But I would disagree for that individual that it made the problem worse. And I would say you're right that you have to solve why the problem's occurring.
Now you'll have 9 starving people and 10 starving people and 12 starving people. But now you've incentivized starving people.
But what if you can't solve the cause because society won't go and you still are looking at this individual? Nonetheless, this is a debate we've had partially before, and I'd be happy to have this debate.
And it gets very far away from Trump's victory and what we do
this is
and how the left is coping.
This is how I was selling you to the audience. I was like, Fabian's one of the most frustrating people to listen to, but one of my favorite people to listen to, because you could take a conversation of like, hey, Fabian, did you see this video of this fucking moron at the, Raiders game getting the shit beat out of him? And we're going to end up within 10 minutes of this philosophical conversation of sort of non-aggression principle. Yeah. But that's because
I can make fun of people getting
right.
Beat up, right? But, give me a little credit.
But it's not really an insult, because what it is you, unlike 99% of the people I talk to, actually have a grounded philosophical position that you're coming through in a worldview, and so you can't help but use that worldview when you're interpreting any of these situations. So many people just want to I could comment on this specific thing, and then you pry a little, and it's like, well, how did you come to that conclusion? And they don't know. It's basically like feels or someone told.
They vibed it.
Right.
Like how they thought Kamala was going to win. We vibed it.
Wait, right. So to get it back, though, to sort of what we're talking about, with this defeat of the Democrats, specifically in Kamala Harris, it's very interesting because you see all of these people that try to manipulate data. And one of the things I found the most blatant was, if you watch the media, almost immediately, once it was obvious she lost in the wee hours of the morning yesterday, or I guess today, they started saying things like, well, all things considered, with as bad as the economy is, as bad as the border is, she actually ran a reasonable campaign. She did pretty well. Like the
She ran a
flippancy.
horrible campaign.
She did. But just the flippancy of these people that just 24 hours before that, the same individuals, the same characters that were telling you the economy's great. The border's very good. Like, do you think that even is like surface level as it is, just something like that, is that why we're seeing so many people that are now going to more independent formats and maybe listening to someone like Joe Rogan or something has more of an impact than these traditional forms of media because people are just like, enough's enough. It's getting so blatant at this point.
I don't know, right? Like I think yeah, I mean, I think journalistic integrity has plummeted, right? I think the philosophical change of journalists in legacy media that have chased dollars is kind of very similar to like how streamers change over time. It's audience capture, right? You know, so I think there are a bunch of variables as to why people are going towards independent media. Some of it is just the technology, right? I mean, 10 years ago, a streamer, you know, to have a good webcam was really expensive, right? But now anybody can go to Walmart and buy a 1080p 60 frames per second camera and stream relatively well. You don't need a good computer to do it. So the market gets saturated, sure, but that also means more competition. And so I just think that there are better and better voices out there. I also think some of it is people go and find what they want to hear, and you don't get that from traditional mainstream media. And some of that actually is bad, I think, right? Like, I think people go and they go watch Hassan so that they can have their own opinions reinforced about like why capitalism's evil, why the West is evil, you know, and they use that as a source of news, which really is just further and further cult indoctrination. And some of it's really good, right? Like, because, you know, like, for example, I follow David Pakman. I watch David Pakman regularly. I don't watch David Pakman because I like David Pakman. I don't. Well, I kind of do in the sense that I like my ability to be like to check in and be like, how are these people viewing things, right? And it enrages me sometimes, but I try and like chill out and be like, okay, right? Like, be the bigger person here and just fucking listen to what's going on. So I mean, like, you know, there's just a lot of choice available. I do think X is going to be a huge factor in social media moving forward, and I do think Trump really needed to win in order to protect that in a certain regard, right? Like, I think if Kamala had won, you know, we wouldn't have X. Like, I really do think that X would have been forcibly sold or would have been like regulated to an extreme degree. I mean, she and Tim Walz both openly stated in different ways that it was she made the claim that it was ridiculous that there wasn't heavy government regulation on speech against X, which is right. And then Tim Walz said that like the freedom of speech doesn't protect you from hate speech and misinformation. And then they're like, and then people like Pisco, you know, like come out of the woodwork and be like, he means election interference misinformation. It's like, yeah, that's where it starts, asshole. Right. It's like once you justify them in one domain, it happens in another. It is very interesting. We're in for a kind of brave new world here in the sense that artificial intelligence or natural language processing models is going to radically change the way media consumption is, right? Like the very close next step is that people are going to be getting AIs that aggregate news of the day and then aggregate all of the information, attempt to separate what is fact, what facts are shared and most likely true, and then generate content and articles for people. And that'll be really interesting. I think there will be companies that do it well and companies that do it really poorly. But I think we're headed to an even further domain of actually being able to get true stories once that occurs, right? Like Ground News, for example, is a news aggregate, right? That rates things. It's very easy. I could do it right. I mean, I can't do it right now because I'm not a programmer, but like I could hire someone, probably a relatively small amount of money and if I had enough data and I had a data center, right, then I could just take a news article and then grab all of them, rate them, you know, based off of their bias, and then take the facts that are true amongst all of them and then report them and write and generate an article. You know, so I think people are shifting towards independent news and the old guard news is dying. But I also kind of think people like you and me are going to be fine because we do editorialized content and opinion, but I think there are a lot of shows like what's that little prancy blonde dude that was been around for a long time that does YouTube news. Oh my god, I can't think of his fucking name.
I know one.
I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. Someone in the
super
chat.
famous, but
yeah, someone in the chat.
Regardless, like people that do breaking news and like here's a news story and blah 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 blah. Those people are going away. Like those channels are not going to make it in as AI comes in. So it's going to be editorial is going to be the name of the game in terms of political content and stuff. And I do think a lot of people are going to go for that for context and stuff. So it'll be very interesting to see what news happens. As much as I'm not pro-Trump, right, I am happy to know that X has another 4 years. I mean, I would still love my old account back, Elon. You know what I mean? I would still love for you to stop censoring things like cisgender. It's the dumbest fucking thing you've ever done because it just gives the left ammunition to say that the left is censored.
Yep.
Right? Like I do think you need to tweak your algorithm in terms of how mass reporting works and the fact that you don't have employees review those people that are mass reported. But he seems to be trying at the very least. So yeah, I mean, I and also,
you should see
Rumble is doing great things,
Yeah, I agree. You should see the names of people. The blonde guy. Here's some of the names people said: Elijah Schaefer, Hunter Avalon, PewDiePie, Kyle Kalinske. The names, the disparate names.
None of those people.
It's not those people, but Philip DeFranco is a guy like who you're talking about.
Philip DeFranco. That's exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah. I agree with you there. I think that there is sort of people are waking. To me, it's like the problem is when you're in this bubble. I think what you see with a lot of these, I would call them not just lefties, I would call them like pro-establishment people. The problem is they've got complacent in their control of these institutions, even the people at the lower level that are repeating them, and it becomes sort of a perversion of itself. Like, let me give you an example. I always use modern art, right? It's like you go and you just see some guy like stack up 10 sand buckets and knock it down. It's like everyone applauds. Like, it's because everyone's in this bubble over and over, and everyone's afraid to call out the emperor has no clothes. Or in debate, what I did, everyone talks like an auctioneer. Why? Well, because one guy talked a little faster, then a little, and no one wants to be the guy that's like, I can't keep up with this. So you all just keep going along to get along. I feel like that's what a lot of these media landscapes are. Yes, they're just blatant propagandists, but they're so bad now. They're not just corrupt, they're so bad that they can't even hide it like maybe they could have 20 years ago. And so now you just see... Like real quick, I'll say like the bloodbath hoax. Anyone who sees it for 3 seconds, like Trump says there's going to be an economic bloodbath in the automobile sector, and they're just blatantly like, holy shit, he said bloodbath. And you're like, the average person, even them, I think they're seeing it at this point like, wait, what the fuck? Like, that's it? That's what you're going to hype on?
So have you ever heard of like the map copying problem from the Renaissance?
No, not to my knowledge, no.
So during the Renaissance, there was an issue with a lot of the maps that sailors used. And what it was is basically there was a game of telephone that was played with maps because the printing press wasn't available. And so because the printing press wasn't available, every single map that was drawn, oftentimes you would have to copy a map by hand. And then what would happen is the original map would go somewhere along, somewhere else. And then you'd have this copy that was close, but not exactly the right. And then someone else would need maps, so they would copy the copy of the map. And then someone would copy the copy of the copy. And then someone would copy the copy of the copy of the copy. And eventually what you would have is sailors would go out to like try and explore. They'd have a map that they had purchased that was supposed to be accurate. And there'd be like islands on the map that didn't fucking exist.
Right.
There'd be like the coast would be wrong, right? They'd have a really inaccurate map. And this is like a map copying problem or telephone. The left and matriarchy is becoming self-referential, and it's causing a serious problem in our culture because Christians are kind of right about the patriarchy and about men in that they were the patriarchy, conservative values, the right, they're grounded in reality in a lot of ways. Obviously, not all of the right wing is grounded in reality, but when you had this division of roles between the patriarchy and the matriarchy, you had men that would go out and work, men that would hunt, men that would fish, men that would deal in the real world, and they established dominance over a culture, a community, a society. And women would then maintain order within the family, within the community, right? And all of these things would kind of like, and there's a symbiotic relationship there. And as we have pushed women to the forefront, we've pushed matriarchy, and we've pushed leftism, which is matriarchal in a lot of ways, collectivist, right? Because you can kind of replace matriarchy with collectivism, or you can in a lot of ways, because the role of the feminine in society is to make sure that everyone has food on their plate, right? The role of a mother is to make sure that everyone gets their fair share, right? But when you involve them in politics, things start to change. That's not necessarily a scalable idea for 350 million people, right? This is why they tend to be socialist in a lot of ways. And so that's kind of what has happened with the left, is as this echo chamber occurs and you're not forced to be grounded in reality. There's no one on the left, very few, that are like hard-nosed, like, is this real? Is this true? I don't care if it helps me or aids me. It must be regarded in reality, because in order for me to fight, I must be engaged in reality. There's only the matriarchal, self-referential, collectivist side of the left. And so what ends up happening as you reiterate this game is a map copying problem. They're not referencing rules that are grounded in reality. They're referencing rules that are grounded within their own philosophy about racism, about bigotry, about all of these other things. And every iteration, every copy goes a little bit more left and a little bit less grounded in reality. And nobody is enforcing rules. It's like it's the classic conservative versus liberal problem of, like, the conservative comes upon a road that has a fence, and the conservative says, why is there a fence here? And the liberal says, we have to get rid of the fence so people can use the road. That's the classic problem that you're having on the left, is as we get more polarized, as people are less connected, as the echo chambers go, more and more they're concerned with knocking down fences without asking, why are those fences there to begin with? And so this self-referential mappy copying problem is getting worse and worse. And I think that's part of the reason. Like, nobody on the left even knows why they believe the things that they believe anymore. They just know that the collective believes it, and then they get a little crazier every iteration because someone introduces a little bit more of a critical theorist position, and they begin to kind of eject people into this I didn't leave the left left me position, which of course causes the right to move over to the left to grab these leftists that are now want a home in the conservative, portions of our society. And so I don't know what to do about this problem. I'm just kind of like giving an about like looking at it and seeing what I think might be. I think that's why shit gets so, when you look at it from the outside, you're like, what you said is so easily Googleable. Even Google that hides shit will tell you that this is retarded. Like, even Snopes said this isn't true. Like, how did you not Google this? There's no demand to ground their rules or police themselves in reality. There's only a demand for order to the philosophical concepts of bigotry, racism, feminism, pronouns. Trans women are women, clapping as they say the religious catechism of the left. It's all self-referential order, and it gets more insane every time it iterates.
No, I think that's a great explanation of what you're saying, because to me, not looking at it, delving that deep, what ends up happening is oftentimes as someone who's just basically some redneck that's working in home health care, I think I'm a reasonably intelligent person, but I follow this stuff sort of at a level maybe more than surface, but I'm by no means being paid to be a political consultant, media expert, or any of those sorts of things. And you see this shit and you're just like, how in God's name is this the best you could have came up with? Off the top of my head, I could have came up with a similar lie.
It's like, I can argue for you 10 times better than you can argue for
Exactly.
you.
And it's like the lack of time. And I think you're right that that's a good explanation of, it's not just corruption. And people always, the big debate you get when you're talking about these issues, like, for example, if I'm talking about double standards at the FBI, it amazes me how many times what you'll see is the people defending them going, well, it wasn't corrupt, it was incompetence. But the truth is, it's always both. It really is a lack of skill and a corruptible institution. That's the truth. And so it's always shocking to me how blatant the corruption is, or how blatant the incompetence is, or how blatant the corruption is. And it's like, because like you said, they're copying sort of this idea. They're not really interested in saying, like, we have to keep this believable, right? They're just like, we'll keep going until the wheels fall off the cart, because right now it's working, right? And our side, our little bubble's like, yeah, it's all good. No one's calling out bullshit. But eventually there gets
to like I said with that.
Go ahead.
It's like I said, and I think you saw it as well. I commented on one of your posts on Twitter about like these Jubilee style rapid debates. And like people on the left are watching someone just get fucking destroyed in a debate. And they're like, oh my God, they worked him. And you're like, what?
Yep.
And it's because the left doesn't have a desire to ground their position in reality. It's become a complete power game. And the power game is to make you look weird, to make you stammer, to make you shocked in disbelief, and then to just gish gallop all of these emotional talking points. And then the vibe becomes the correct answer. The vibe is this person looks confused and silly, and it's like, look how many times Ben Shapiro got tripped up and had to ask questions. And it's like, it's because you didn't make a rational statement.
Right.
Not a single thing that came out of your mouth was rational. You just said 7 different talking points that don't even make sense and aren't grounded in anything. Or often they're statements that aren't arguments. They're just like emotional beliefs that like, and then it's like, okay, well, let's interrogate that belief. And then they hit you with like 7 more beliefs that aren't tied to anything. Right. And they're like, Ben Shapiro got worked. And it's like, I don't like Ben Shapiro. I think he's a bad debater, right? I think he's competent for like college kids, you know, but I think if Ben Shapiro went on a Twitch panel, he'd wreck two dumb lefties and the rightoids would trounce his shit because like, he's actually not that good at it. But like, that's where we're moving. They're getting further and further away from a desire to be grounded in reality. And it's not because you think, well, okay, well, how could any person not want to be grounded in reality? But it's not that their reality is the ideology, because the ideology is axiomatic, right? So they're grounded in something, and it's not just power. It's not just winning. They're grounded in axiomatic beliefs like America is a white supremacist nation. They're grounded in axiomatic beliefs like the wealthy rig the game against the poor. And there's some truth to some of these axioms, right?
Right.
There's some truth to it. And because there's some truth, that was the initial reality that dragged them in, right? Like you start off grounded in reality and go, 60% of people that are incarcerated are black males. Well, that's a true statistic, right? And you don't, and then you further deeper, and every iteration, it's less and less about the reality. Once you take the axiomatic position that America is a white supremacist nation and that the Constitution was created by our founders to instill white supremacy and maintain power over black slaves, well, now you just self-reference. You never check back in with reality. You check back in with your own axiom and goes, does my argument adhere to the axiom that I have? And then and that's when you're outside of it and you don't have that axiom, you're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
And like, let me give you an example in real life that my audience will understand. So the last time I debated, I hate to bring him up again, but I think it's a perfect example of this. Last time I debated Destiny. Long story short, he wanted to do a debate on January 6th, the semantic definition of the word insurrection. I agreed to the debate, but at the outset I said, I don't give a shit about the definition of the term insurrection. What I give a shit is about how our institutions treat what they perceive as insurrections and the double standard and how they do it. That's the debate to me. You could define insurrection so loosely that every criminal action's an insurrection, or you could divide it very tightly. The problem is, if you choose to define it so loosely, then how do we treat that? If I say my definition of a tall person is anyone over 3 feet, you might say, okay, but what does that word mean then? Hey, I saw a tall man pumping gas the other day. You'd be like, so what, a 3'1" guy or a 7' guy? It means nothing at that point, right? So that's the real argument. How do we treat what we're claiming that we've seen? Because we can all massage language. I have this debate with them. I say, we go 5 hours, 2 hours into it. I admit to him that I'd been researching this slightly while I was at work, and I used a bunch of articles, and I also looked up something on Claude AI. And I said, hey, I think actually the author you're using says there could be state-level insurrections. We look at it. Yes, he does say that. We move on. 3 hours later, we get to talking about what I want. He rage quits, right? He then makes a post hoc justification. The reason I rage quit was because 2.5 hours previous to that, Rob used AI. And so now, anytime I post something on X, I will get ratioed every single time with someone saying Rob GPT. Aha, Rob should be blacklisted. He uses AI. Now, that's stupidity. Anyone who's objectively looking is like, well, what's the problem with using AI? And the context of what Rob used AI that time ended up being true. And Destiny talked to Rob 3 hours after the AI was used and didn't have a problem with it. But it doesn't matter because you have this bubble of people that's like, as long as we have a statement that we could point to, no matter how nonsensical it doesn't matter that it's grounded in reality. All that matters is we could say, there's the answer. Right? And so this plays out in all sorts of fucked up ways, like the example you're giving there was sort of systemic racism. You're grounded in some basis of truth, and then the extension of it is you hear Joy Reid on MSNBC yesterday saying, well, the problem is Latino men are racist against black women. And then someone will speak up and go, but wait a minute, Trump got more of a percentage of black men than Republicans before him. So are those black men also racist against Kamala Harris? And they have to be like, yes! And you're like, this is so fucking stupid. What are you talking about? You're literally saying that it couldn't have been like, well, they were concerned about grocery prices, or they didn't like the message. They thought that the campaign of vibes. No. Universally, almost from the mainstream media, it's very simple. Well, it's because she was a black woman. That's why people didn't vote for her. And it's like, none of this is grounded in reality. It goes back to that sort of, like you're saying, the axiomatic core. Well, this is a systemically racist country, and so therefore an outcome that they don't like. What's the reason? Oh, systemic racism. And so we'll just shoehorn, even if it blatantly doesn't make... So you're saying black men are more racist against a black woman than they would have been against, say, a white woman, because Trump did better against Kamala than he did against Hillary with black men. So all of a sudden, black men are more racist against a black woman. You could see the nonsensical reasoning of it, and it gets so fucking frustrating.
For the record, that's not why it wasn't the economy that kept black men out.
Oh, no, of course. But there could be a litany of reasons.
I'll tell you what it was. I'll tell you what it was. It was black women on podcasts consistently shitting on black men.
That's right.
It was Kamala Harris being a fake ass black person, being like, I wash my collard greens in the bathtub. Yep. It was doubts, right? I won't say truth, but doubts, especially people like Candace Owens that are being like, where's the proof that you're black? Other than a picture of you at 20 with Beryl, your grandmother, even though she died 6 years before you were born. Leave that where that is. And then it was the immigration. I think there's, black people, as unfortunate as it is, are still in this mindset that they need the state to help them. That America has fucked over the black community to such a degree that we need welfare, we need investment in small businesses, we need our neighborhoods, our towns need to be healed. And what they have seen is the left no longer gives a fuck about them because they're not low enough or high enough in the oppression hierarchy.
That's exactly it.
Immigrants, I already have your fucking vote. And what I need to do now is I need to bring in immigrants to the tens of millions, and I need to move them to swing states, and I need to give them free housing and give them TANF and give them government programs. And then I need to give them a pathway to citizenship so that in 5 or 6 years when they become citizens, they'll remember that Democrats and the left were the ones that gave them all of this welfare and protected them and, bring in their own socialist country, just like Californians moving to Texas and Colorado, people moving from Venezuela that come from, socialist nations don't realize that it was social did it to a certain degree. Obviously there are others that
Sure.
are based, that's what pushed black men out. It was the identity politics and racism that pushed them out. And because they're self-referential, because they cannot examine their own axioms, it is that very thing that pushed them out that they will double down on.
Of course. I couldn't agree more. I think that you're absolutely spot on. And you could see it at every town hall in black areas, inner city blacks, where they're like, what the fuck? You gave our community center to these illegal immigrants. That was supposed to be ours. That was given to us. And now you're taking it and you're giving it, right? And it really is. You would like to see like sort of some self-reflection like, oh, fuck. The identity politics game got us here in the first place. Maybe we should, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Last question I have.
That's the other problem, the map problem. That's the last thing of the map problem, is that every copy of a map, in order to get to the original, you have to go back to the copy to the copy to the copy to find it. And that's the biggest problem, is that if they admit that, they have to deconstruct their entire worldview.
Yeah, and I totally agree. Now, I think you would agree with this. It's not universal. It's not that the black guy you knew down the street that's been MAGA the whole time voted for this reason. But certainly I think on average, you're right.
That's why I showed you that pyramid.
Sure.
Right? Most people are at the bottom of that pyramid. And it's like individuals don't house the entire philosophy. They house a small part of it, right? So it's like the Karen that works HR at a company that votes Democrat and leans left. You know, she's not super woke, right? But she does pass over white men on job applications and prefer black men or prefer, Indian women or whatever it is, right? It's as Carl Jung said, people don't have ideas have people. It's when you get a mob. It's when you get a collection. It's the amalgamation of all of those pieces that are instantiated in different individuals and the critical mass of those things in an institution that rots it because it's no longer grounded in reality, but instead grounded in these self-referential, woke, axiomatic positions that are designed to push forward revolution, designed to subvert and destroy hierarchical structures.
So let me ask you this to get you out on this. The last question I have is...
Yeah, of course.
You're libertarian, you're ANCAP, you see Trump win. Give me an example. Obviously, you're not going to get everything you want, from just this presidency. It would be impossible even if he was completely aligned with you. But give me an example of like an action he could take early that you think would say, hey, this guy's going in the right direction that I think is going to set the country on a path that's more likely to achieve the goals that you would like to see. Like, can you think of something early that would be pragmatic you could see him doing?
Yeah. First of all, live up to his promises, right? He promised to free Ross Ulbricht. Do it. He promised to put a libertarian in a cabinet position, and people think it's going to be Thomas Massey in the Department of Agriculture. Yeah. Do the things you promise first and foremost. The thing that will, I think, make me a lot more comfortable is if he expands upon what he means by tariffs, right? A flat 10 or a flat 20% tariff just cause is the most destructive thing you could do to the United States economy. It's the worst fucking idea he's ever had in his entire fucking life. And the fact that he sold it to so many dumb fucking conservatives that think that tariffs are going to actually boost our economy is really disheartening as a libertarian, because it is one of the most obviously destructive things towards the economy you could do. However, tariffs can be a tool that force negotiations. Currently, Europe has massive tariffs on almost all of our food because our food is full of poison. And I do wonder, it's a very small, I don't like this, Trump is playing 4D chess, but I do hope in my heart of hearts that he's playing 4D chess, right, and that his actual goal with these tariffs is to get RFK in a room with these people that in Europe that have these tariffs and go, look, bucko, or whatever he says, here's your 20% tariff. If you want me to get rid of your 20% tariff, get rid of your 100% tariff, and I promise you we'll write down new regulations in the FDA that make our food compliant with your European laws. And then we get rid of both of them. And what we end up with is, instead of funneling all of our food into China and having to spend tax money to farming corporations, we can open up the European market. Like, if I see actions like that and I realize that maybe he was playing 4D chess, I think I'll be in a much, much more comfortable position about how Trump is running things, because now he's using tariffs as a defensive tactic in a trade war, as opposed to just levying a massive tax on the American people with this fantasy that it's going to fix American manufacturing when it's not.
I hope you're right too. The tariff argument, it's so discouraging, right? Because I know so many people that will bitch about subsidies, but they're all in on this tariff, and it's like you don't see the contradiction there. You don't see the problem. So I agree with you. I think the best answer I heard, I forget who it was, that explained not the level that you're talking about the FDA there, but explained that this is going to be a bargaining chip. I also hope that that's the idea.
Well, that's just one example, right?
Of course.
I mean, you could do it with China and all the bullshit that they play. It's like, does he begin to use it as a bargaining chip, as a means to actually open up free trade?
Their market stuff, right?
Because we don't have free trade. We are in a trade war with Europe. We are in a trade war with China, and it is insane that nobody recognizes this. Since World War II, Japan and many European countries have had tariffs on our cars since World War II.
Yep.
And they've never gotten rid of them. Like Ford, like you want to talk about the destruction of the auto manufacturing industry in America. Yeah, a lot of that is because China does cheap labor. But some of that is because we've let Germany tariff us and we import German cars and we love them. And then they don't buy our cars because they have massive tariffs on them. Right. So, I mean, if he's going to use it as a tit for tat measure to get rid of tariffs, that would be in the long term an economically beneficial thing to us.
Yeah, totally agree. So real quick, I put your link out there. So that's your YouTube link. Any other links you want? And can you tell people like your normal schedule when you're streaming and stuff if people want to check you out?
Yeah, I just came back. I've been gone because I had to move and, make money, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm going to be streaming Wednesdays and Thursdays with like the occasional, Prime Guys or something on Mondays, occasional Sunday fun day stuff. I usually start stream around 6 or 7 p.m. Eastern. Fabian Liberty, you can find me on Twitch. I don't know why you would want to do that because I don't stream on Twitch, because Twitch has just doubled down on being completely Marxist because they affirmed, quote, your lived experience makes you immune to all of their hate speech bullshit, which is another term for that is standpoint epistemology, which is a cornerstone of critical race theory and critical theory. It's a Marxist position. But I'm on YouTube. It's all right. I might eventually start doing stuff on Rumble, but without having an editor and stuff, it's become so difficult to do both.
I use Restream to do both, but it is difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, and find me on Twitter, Fabian Liberty. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the audience. I'm not always nerding out hardcore on philosophy, but I usually am. I'm a hardcore libertarian. If you want to learn more about libertarianism and stuff, join the channel, join Discord. But I do the occasional takedown of commie fucks, and I'm really good at it because here you go, little lore drop. I used to be a Marxist, Maoist, Leninist. I've read all their fucking literature. And I slowly came to libertarianism through the theory and personal experiences. So when they try and play games with me, I'm like, yeah, dude, I've read that book. Fuck off.
That's great. I will say one of my favorite streams, oftentimes I'm such a talker, I'm doing the bulk of talking even if I'm on someone else's show. One of my favorite streams where I took a back seat was you and your co-host. I came on and you had a PowerPoint set up. I don't know if you remember this, that went through sort of the history of Joe McCarthy. No one does that shit. If you did, I know there's a ton of fucking work and research that goes into something like that, but I was telling my audience before you came on, the idea of visual learning at the same time while you're talking about it, show me the channel that does that. I just don't see it. So I don't know if you still do stuff like that, but, and I know that's a ton of work.
Like, I'll probably be redoing it on Thanksgiving again as well. And what I do is I go through the actual, not the bullshit leftist history you learned in school about the Native Americans, about Philip's War, about the skirmishes, about the places that were wiped out, about the treaties, about how, the fact that the colonists right before Philip's War had Native American representatives on their council of judges when there was crime between the two of them. All of this shit these lies that we learn about, like we slaughtered natives and all this other bullshit that you learn. So yeah, I do like doing some of those historical narratives that are done. Like I said, I'll probably be doing one on Thanksgiving again as well. If you want to come hang out for that.
Yeah, let me know. I'll promote it. And maybe I will come hang out or at least watch it, though. Thanksgiving's always rough for me because I got like...
Well, I don't mean the day of Thanksgiving. I mean, like, it'll probably be a day or two before.
Yes. Yeah. So I got, because of the crazy work schedule I have, I end up doing like 5 Thanksgiving dinners. So I'm going to put on like 30 pounds that week because I go with like all my clients that I work with. So, but hey, it was great talking to you again. Hopefully we'll talk soon. And yeah, I really appreciate coming on today. I knew it would be fun to hear from you and what you thought about the election. So.
Appreciate it.
All right, man. You take it easy. Great talk. Always enjoy talking to Fabian. Oops, sorry. All right. Let's do we'll go a little further. So once more, thank you to Fabian. Thank you, everyone. I got 10,000 subscribers. I hit the 10,000 mark today. An incredible achievement for me. Thank you all. Let me read some super chats that I may have missed there. I apologize for that. John Barrett gifts 1 Normal America membership. Thank you so much, John. Austin Graham for $10 says, hey, Rob, I'm hearing Jack Smith is on his way out and will be gone before Trump takes office because of yesterday's result. Can you speak on the status of Trump's legal cases if you haven't already? So I talked about this briefly, but yes, I believe Jack Smith has said that the DOJ and him are going to stop, and they said the reason is the policies on not going after presidents, and because he's the incoming president, they're going to stop that investigation. However, you do have people like Letitia James, who's operating at the state level, that seems to suggest she's going to continue to proceed apace. That would also be true currently of the felonies, 37 felonies that Trump's been charged with in the Alvin Bragg case out of New York. Those aren't federal cases, those are state cases. And so they're, as far as I know, going to continue with that sentencing. I would say that they will not be able to sentence him to prison. Obviously, things will intervene. But they're still going to try, probably, to use lawfare to go after him. John Barrett for $2 says, besides the green screen, he seems reasonable-ish. Yeah, I like Fabian. You don't care for the green screen. John Barrett for $2 says, convincing it, Rob. We steal him with Vegemite money? I missed some comments. I saw that someone said, I don't know if this is true, when referencing Andy Maynard, it said, Destiny just put Rob on the Ben Shapiro Crowder level. Well, not audience-wise, right? Listen, here's the truth. I think a lot of the big left-wing streamers that I debate, their audience will buy the bullshit that, like, I'm some sort of idiot. But the people that are actually debating know it's very challenging to debate me. And it's because the reason that I'm such a good debater, not to brag about myself too much, but the reason is because I have a consistent worldview that I've thought through, because I could be authentic, and because I'm able to sort of tell a story that is based on facts, that's compelling to people. And it allows me to be very, very sort of, like Trump would say, weave. It allows me to engage in a swath of sort of argumentation at a broad level that I'm also able to go in depth on specific issues and be able to connect it to a person. Oftentimes what happens is you'll debate people that are very smart, but it's difficult for them to connect to a person because they're using language that's too technical. I'll give you an example. I'm debating this Sage Outcast guy the other day. He apparently has a job that he owns a company that deals in shipping. And no doubt he knows more about shipping than me. So we talk about sort of lockdowns that occurred during the illness there in 2020. He's incapable of explaining what he's trying to articulate in a way that makes sense to the average person. Now, part of that's probably because he's over his skis a little and he's pretending to know a little more than he actually does. But part of it's also because he's using sort of this lingo that the average person isn't going to be able to understand. And so he's just sort of, and a lot of people think that's impressive. Oh, I'll impress people by talking in a way that sounds very scientific or very sophisticated. And then I'll win the debate because the other person couldn't keep up. But that's actually terrible. That's actually the inverse of the truth. If you're talking in a hyper-specialized way to the point where average person can't understand, sure, there is a portion of those people that are already predisposed to agree with you that's going to be like, impressive. But most people are going to be like, especially if you have someone articulate on the other side, are going to be like, this is sort of bullshit. This is a bunch of fluff. And so I think that that's a mistake that people make. Anyways, just to get to the point of it, I just think that it's it's ultimately, you just have to know when stuff's bullshit. You have to have confidence in yourself, and you have to sort of try to look at yourself objectively. And I'm not saying I've won every debate I'm ever in, or I'm the greatest debater in the history of the world. Quite to the contrary. If I was the greatest debater in the history of the world, I would have won the national debate tournament instead of placing near the bottom at the national debate tournament. So I'm good, and I know I'm good. And so when you just hear a litany of people say, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck, you know that it's just bullshit. And deep down, the people that I'm actually debating, they know it's bullshit too. And you could hear it. Like, for example, when I talked to Lonerbox for one time, I went in, debated Lonerbox, ended the debate, went about my day. People were sending me clips. It's like, did you see what Lonerbox said after you left? He was like, holy shit. Like, Rob's one of the best voices on the right. He knows it. I know it. They know it. So, yeah, I would put myself as a good debater up there. I don't know that I'd put Crowder on Ben Shapiro's level, but maybe he meant, like, influence or the ability to relate to an audience. But anyways, I guess from someone with thin skin like Destiny, even for him to say something like that is something. You know, I don't agree with Fabian with everything either. Doing an interview is different than doing a debate. I've debated Fabian at great length for hours and hours. I'm sure we'll debate again. Same when I had Casimir on the other day. I find libertarian philosophy to be fascinating, and I think that it makes me a better debater and have a better understanding to give them an unfiltered access to be able to discuss what their beliefs are. A lot of what Fabian and Casimir are saying I agree with, but there are things on the margins that I disagree. It's just not the right format to go back and forth, particularly when we're talking about the election results here today. So I think Fabian's a ethical person. I think he is an authentic person. I find him to be entertaining. That's subjective, to each their own. And I enjoy talking to him. I know sometimes, as I said at the beginning, sometimes people that are like libertarians, they get tired of hearing those rehashing of arguments. But like I said, if you have a consistent worldview, you're often going to hear sort of argument. You're going to look at the world through that lens. Similarly, I can't help but oftentimes bring up governmental corruption when I'm talking about issues, because that's core to my belief about what our government's doing and the problems we need to fix with our government. So you might say, hey, Rob, what do you think about the government's new subsidies or mandating of windmills? Probably at some point I'm going to mention government corruption, because that's sort of where my worldview is when it comes to our government. So if you don't like hearing about government corruption, you're probably like, fuck this guy Rob, he's always talking about that. What's that have to do with... Same with libertarianism. If you don't like that philosophy, you might say, well, why is he bringing this up again? But I think they have good reason to, because that's core to what their values are. All right, let's check again. Let's look at these specific races and see if we have any movement. What I would like to do, see, the New York Times isn't... Carrie Lake's race, we're at 67% now, and she's still down, but she's increasing partially, so she's now down about, what am I looking at here? 80,000 votes. So we'll see. There's still a lot of votes out there. And then in general, the decision desk is predicting... That number's basically not moved. They're putting it about a 90% chance that Republicans win the House of Representatives, and they're predicting 222 states. Ciordi, thanks so much for $10, says, love you and Fabian, thanks for having the chat. Absolutely. By the way, I couldn't see a lot of what was going on in the chat. It looked like there was some heated shit going on there, particularly on Twitch, so I hope you guys are having fun there in the chat. Anything else specifically y'all wanted me to talk about or ask me about before I go? Mass protests have broken out in Chicago. Let's see if I see anything about that. So tomorrow night's show, what I would like to do is talk about what I see as winners and losers from this election. And I don't mean Carrie Lake and Donald Trump will be on the winners, but I'm not just talking about who won races and who lost races. I'm talking about the grander scale of what we're seeing. So the example I gave was Ronna McDaniel, former head of the RNC, is a loser because the effectiveness of the RNC going into 2024 compared to 2020 and 2022 is night and day. It's just night and day. And Ronna, as the head of the RNC, was absolutely terrible. Let's see. Yeah, I see the protest there in Chicago from Chuck Calesto. We'll see. Hopefully it doesn't break out in violence, but it will break out in violence eventually. Maybe not this particular protest. By the way, people should have the right to protest Donald Trump. I don't have a problem with that. That's sort of par for the course. Something to keep an eye on if you want to see some little drama going on X that I think is absolutely hilarious. Look at the pollsters that were considered, quote, right-wing pollsters, such as Atlas Intel, Rasmussen, Trafalgar. Look at them and the fight they're having with, like, 538 or Nate Silver or a lot of these left-wing pollsters. It is absolutely hilarious what's going on right now, because what you saw was Nate Silver and 538, they prioritize, they give grades to different pollsters, and they've deprioritized places like Rasmussen. They say Rasmussen's too biased. But Rasmussen, Trafalgar, Atlas, they were all remarkably close to the actual results. And then these other pollsters like New York Times, Marist, etc., they were terrible. And so, like, Rasmussen's going off like, hey, why were we considered illegitimate? You know, and it's really funny, this little meta argument that's going on from people in the polling world. John Baird says, tell us of your love of Vegemite 2028. I hate Vegemite. I've only had it once. It was like in 3rd grade. It was brutal. Now, granted, I probably ate way too much, and I don't know if a young palate is something that's going to enjoy that. So Decision Desk is now saying that, is it every race has been called? They just called Arizona. That puts Trump at 312. So yeah, that's it. The final tally, according to Decision Desk, and it is likely to be the final tally, is 312 electoral votes for Trump. That is a landslide. That is a mandate, is what that is. Trump won every single swing state, and his margin that he cut in even the blue states was significant. Texas went 14 points. That was a place where Democrats thought they were making inroads. Florida, 13 points. Iowa, where they were claiming they had a chance, 13 points for Trump. And then you look at like New York. New York only went 11 points for Harris. That means Florida and Texas are more red than New York is blue. Before I go, CTV wanted me to address this question. So you had the vote tallies in, let's see if I can find this. Now, there's clearly counting that's still going on. First off, Biden got 306 electoral votes, so Trump's won by a greater margin than Biden did. He's also won the popular vote, the House, and the Senate, it looks like. Let's do a little math here. The vote tallies for Joe Biden in the 2020 election was 81 million and change. We'll just round to 81 million. For Trump, it was 74 million and change. Now, if you go to today, Trump's actually underperformed. Now, granted, there's still counting going on. So, for example, we could see Arizona's only 73% in, so we have to be careful. California is only 60% in. See some of these states, which is egregious that they're still... But there's still votes out there. So, for example, it's 60% in California, and we have 9 million votes. That means that you're going to see another 4 million. So I would say there's probably close to 6 million votes left outstanding. Probably by the end of that, if the proportions continue to go in ways we see, Kamala Harris is probably going to end up with close to 71 million votes. Trump, I would guess, then will come close to 74 million votes, would be my guess. So 71, 74. You compare that over here where Trump will about meet that same number at 74. It'll be very close to that. That puts Kamala, despite what people are saying, that puts Kamala Harris at roughly not 15 million below, but 10 million votes below Joe Biden. And so the question becomes, where did 10 million votes go? People are making the mistake of saying 15 million votes. But again, remember, counting's still going on. So my guess is it'll be between 9 and 10 million votes that have disappeared. Basically, it looks like what happened is Trump performed about the same, which is very good. It's the most votes in U.S. history for a president other than Joe Biden. So the question is, where did 9 to 10 million votes go from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris? And there's 2 schools of thought on this. 3, I guess. The first school, which seems very unlikely, is that Kamala Harris was just so much worse than Joe Biden in this campaign that 9 to 10 million people that otherwise would have voted for Biden were like, I'm going to stay home. Made the conscious decision to stay home. For me, that sounds not plausible. Not at that level. You might expect 1 million or 2, but 9 million that just decided to not participate? Even if that's true, that's a scathing indictment of the Democrat strategy that painted Trump as Hitler and January 6th as a coup to overthrow the country. Because what that would mean would be that strategy was so ineffective that 9 to 10 million people that otherwise would have voted Democrat was like, I find this so unpersuasive, I'm not even going to vote. That's brutal. So that's number one. The number two theory is that voting was so much easier in 2020 that you saw an increase 9 to 10 million people. So there's two ways to look at that. It was easier, so there were less regulations than there were in 2024. I'm not so sure how true that is, and we'll look into that in a second here. Or the second explanation would be people were bored. They were chomping at the bit to get out and do something because we had all of these lockdowns. Now, let's take a look at a specific state. So let's look at the vote totals in my state of Pennsylvania, arguably the most important swing state. And then let's look at the totals from this year. I haven't done this yet, so it'll be interesting to see what the numbers suggest. So Pennsylvania is basically 100% in. There'll be provisional ballots. You have 34.5 million basically for Trump and 33 and close to a half for Kamala. So that puts you at roughly, let's just say, 6.8 million, roughly. 2020 in Pennsylvania, you have 6.7 million. So that would mean Pennsylvania actually is on pace to outperform. More people vote in 2020 than, or in 2024 than 2020. Now the question would become, okay, if the theory is correct that this was shadow votes for Biden in 2020 that didn't really exist, it doesn't seem that that's really showing up in a swing state such as Pennsylvania, which would be the most populous swing state, or one of the most important swing states. So let's take another state. Let's try, what's a swing state we could look at? Michigan. Michigan. We have 2.8 million for Biden, 2.6.5 for Trump. So that puts us at a total of about 545, 5,450,000. And we'll see here. Here we have close to the same. Now, what I'm not counting, I guess, in either is the outstanding votes. So it looks like in Michigan, again, the numbers are pretty much the same. So the question is, where are these numbers different? Now, I do think there's something to the argument that there could have been shadow votes that possibly affected the election, and it's something that needs to be looked into. But isn't this something that would go against that theory if in the swing states the vote tallies seem to be similar? Yeah, my prediction on the House is that it looks like it'll be a victory for Republicans. Decision Desk is saying the chances of that, of the House going to Republicans is 88%. They're predicting 222 seats. That would put 4 over what's necessary for control. I would say 221 would be my prediction. So we'll see how that goes. But 221, 222. But I think it's pretty confident at this point that, yeah, they'll pick up. So it's definitely something worth looking forward to. Looking into are those House races, and certainly the Senate race of Kerry Lake, I think, is something worth looking into. Still haven't called Pennsylvania for Dave McCormick. I think that's just a matter of time. Right now, it would basically require 30,000 votes to come in for Bob Casey, and we basically have 99 point something reporting. So it would be down to provisional ballots being picked out for 30,000 of Bob Casey. I don't think that's possible. Right. So the argument that people are making is this. Thanks so much, Slayer. I appreciate it. Thanks for the sub. The argument is this. It's not that Trump really outperformed very much from last time. It's that Kamala Harris performed basically 10 million votes less than Joe Biden. That's the problem. So where did those 10 million votes go? And what I'm saying is, well, if you were going to cheat and add votes, you probably added them to swing states. But when you look at the swing states, at least in Pennsylvania, Michigan, to me, it doesn't seem evident that those were added. Let's check Georgia real quick, because that's where you had, pipes bursting and et cetera, et cetera. So let's check. Now, I'm just looking at this real quick. There might be more to it. So don't take this as definitive, but I try to do my best before saying this absolutely happened. It's absolutely a legitimate conspiracy. I'm trying my best to, at least have some due diligence to look into. So Georgia, we have, with just Trump-Harris, 2.6 for Trump, 2.6.5, basically 2.5.5 for Harris. So that puts us at 5.1 million roughly. And with Georgia, we have 4.8. So according to these numbers, I might suggest that in these deep blue areas, like let's say in Illinois, where you have 4.51, let's check Illinois here. Was there way more for Biden? I don't know, maybe I'm missing something here. Yeah, so Illinois, it looks like, is going to be about 5.8, 5.9. Illinois was roughly 6 million in 2020, and it's looking to be about 5.1 here, so about 900,000 less votes in Illinois this time. I'm Published this first time here, but just curious, is it possible there was inflation of votes in 2020 and just a lack of them now? Yeah, it's absolutely possible. There could be, it seems that that's the case. The question is it for nefarious reason or is it for logical reasons? The argument for nefarious is, there's no way that there's 10 million less Kamala Harris voters than Biden voters. There's no way that you had this anomaly year in 2020 where all of a sudden all these people voted for Biden and then it tailed off so drastically. The explanation for why it could be illegitimate is, well, the reason that occurred was twofold. One, because people were more time on their hands in 2020 and it was easier to vote because of the pandemic, etc. So more people voted. And second, people were less motivated this time by Kamala Harris. She wasn't as good of a candidate. So it'll require looking in to see what the most likely scenario is, but I would not put it past sort of shenanigans to be going on. I'm just trying to do my best to address something that people suggested that I look into. All right. With that said, we're going to end for tonight. Join me tomorrow night between 6 and 8 p.m. I'll be doing a show where we'll talk about winners and losers, hopefully, of this election. Thank you so much. I will set up a 10,000 sub sort of show that we're going to do soon. I'll be taking ideas on what we should do with that sort of show. One of the things I need done is, can someone explain to me how to raid someone on YouTube? I just don't know how to do it. And I feel terrible. I have 250 viewers, and I don't know how to raid someone on YouTube. That's terrible. Permission. No, that's not. Share the link in chat to their channel, but that's not how you do the raid specifically. Another 24-hour stream for 10K. Whew. That's a tough sale. To raid on YouTube, You can type the following states: backslash raid, enter channel name, press enter, wait 10 seconds. So similar to how you do it in Twitch. Let's try that. Okay. Let's try. So bear with me for a second. Thank you, whoever. I'm sorry I missed that. Whoever just donated or followed, thank you so much. I'm sorry I missed that. I'm muddling through my stupidity and boomerism. So I type raid. Who's available? Fabian. Let's try that. Is that going to work? Or do I do it this way? Oh, watching boomers. No, it's not working. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely, the brain. By the way, great point. 10 million votes split across 50 states is 200,000 per state. That's actually a great point. And if you're talking about states that were decided by 40,000, that's a problem. You know, Fabian's not live. He's shown up as live on my channel. Maybe not, though. Let's see. He's not live. Neither is that person. Well, whatever. We'll raid someone on Twitch. I'll figure this out later. Apologies. Okadiddly-ogle. Well, I'm an idiot. We could raid someone on Twitch. So, you guys are the best. I really appreciate all of you. Your money will go to a good cause, I assure you. A lot of it's going to go back into the channel. Some of it will go to my son. I have very exciting news about something that we're going to do with my son that I'm just so pumped about. We're going to a Polar Express train ride and then a Christmas village here in Pennsylvania. We got a hotel for 2 nights. That's going to be in early December. I couldn't be happier. I'm so excited to do Christmas with my son now that he'll be roughly 4 years old and he's starting to understand it more. So I'm so pleased, and I'm looking forward to that. But I'll be back tomorrow, man. You guys are the best. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for tuning in to me. Thank you for the 10,000 subs. It means so much to me. It really does. I've been working for that for so long, and I'm excited. I'm going to talk to my wife. We're going to come up with a plan on what to do for the thank you stream for 10,000. You guys are the best. We'll see you tomorrow between 6 and 8 p.m. As always, have a good one.